Hey everyone. Sorry I'm late. I don't know where I am, what I am, or who I am today. It's one of those days. Whew. Okay. I realized that we missed a lot of the audio from the Ring cameras because the stream that I was getting it from just cut out. So I went back through and I grabbed the audio from the Ring cameras. And what I did was I compiled it all into one file and I took out all of the dead space that I could and as much of the banging. So not being able to visually see things, it's kind of hard to know, what's going on. So a lot of it doesn't make sense, but you can hear some arguments with them. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. It's about 20 minutes long. And just so you know, what I cut out was either just dead air or you could hear somebody shuffling around. There was a ton of banging, like a ton of banging going on, that I cut it out because, yeah, you're moving stuff around. Everything kind of echoes. Ring camera doesn't exactly have the best video. So, okay, here we go.
Intending to mute the audio? All right, I just want to make sure. I thought this is what you're doing. Okay.
And so that for each one is the video that then precedes it.
Right.
For those 1 minute video.
Hi, bud. Yeah, come on in for a second. Yeah.
Bye. What are you doing? It's a butt. Pulling butt.
Yeah.
Can I talk pulling butt?
Yeah, the bus. Yeah, sure.
Can I talk it?
Yeah. Sure.
Can I talk the Legos?
Yeah. Okay, let's go. Oh.
You gonna play a little bit, or are you tired?
Yeah, we'll play a little bit. What'd you do that?
Because I don't like, because you can see like the carpet that's behind the wall, and when I want to sit right there, I want to see these pictures because I want to be right under the AC, and I don't want that wire right there on the desk.
No, I'm gonna get a length, but I gotta put that back. I want that desk against that wall.
Right now?
Yeah, right now. Let's just do this. Put the stuff out of here for right now. That gets. No, that's it. Keep adjusting your. Good evening. Okay, good night.
Good night.
You wanna tell me something? Stand up. Tell me something?
What?
Don't tell me what. This is your one chance.
Don't look at me like an asshole. You want to tell me something or not?
I have a nightmare.
Yeah, from where?
Blue bed.
Where?
Green bed.
Excuse me?
Green bed.
Stealing again? I mean,
What
really?
the fuck is wrong with you?
You're stealing,
Fucking
like,
disappointing.
chocolate? And you're saying, we got so much stuff in your
You're
room.
fucking great. You're just such a disappointment. You're gonna lose. I'm gonna take you out of that school. And you're gonna be in this room.
He's gonna be...
You're this close. Because I can't trust shit you do. I'm gonna put the ankle bracelet back on. And then you can try to fucking run away if you want and do all the bullshit you do. But I'm gonna lock your ass down.
Because those are for my toilet.
Give me a fucking break.
Why are your little tape?
I'm sick of the bullshit. You're a big boy, you're gonna steal, you're gonna talk to police. I'm gonna give you a fucking real deal. Okay? You're gonna steal from our fucking house?
Again?
Give me a fucking break, bro. What other shit do you got in here?
Nothing else.
Because you're gonna lose it all in about 2 seconds. Lose every fucking
It's
thing.
all gonna be
this
smashed
shit.
real
I
quick.
told you not to unplug that fucking thing. Right?
Yeah.
Do you listen to me?
Yeah.
Bullshit, you
No, you didn't. You
Yes, I
told
did.
to plug this in, and then you're just a liar. You just keep lying. You lied earlier when I asked you. You can't.
Fucking disappointing.
Obviously, I'm gonna open everything up. Nothing hiding here.
Stand up, stand in the corner. Shit as always, right? Now lose this, right? We're gonna lose this again? Same way? Is that what you wanna do?
I can't go through everything. I just want to look to the side.
I know, let's just do the basics.
Why are these in here? Are these yours?
No, Pierce just dumped them the other day. Why are you bringing them in there, Pierce? Really? Why are you bringing them in there?
What do you got all these things in?
Why?
I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in here that's going to be all...
Anything else you want to tell us about before we find it? Get over there.
Why do you have this in here? This is not yours.
What?
Where are these in here? Who knows?
What are they?
This is like belongs to the kids or...
Oh, let's get some garbage. Very good. See what your lion does? See what your lion does? You see it?
Is this...
We're going back to this?
Is this to keep you going late at night, lights and stuff?
The way I understood what was going on, I watched it a couple times, is that he's like digging through everything that's in his room, trying to find out what he has, because he said he was stealing things from them in the house. I didn't know you could steal things from your own house, but good to know. I stole a spoon from the kitchen earlier.
I don't know what you're doing. You just got ice cream with us, right? Why are you...
I'm this close to getting you a computer to do coding.
Yeah, right.
Do you deserve that shit now? Fuck no.
Okay, I'm just gonna take this out, because obviously I can't trust them after all these things. Just take this one out. Take this one out. Those are empty, probably garbage anyway. And these, because obviously there's probably stuff in all of these.
Why did you move this? Was that a big lie? Yes. That you could have a hidden spot and you couldn't be seen on the camera, right? Yeah. But you're gonna lie to me. I want to have it this way so I can sit this way so I can do this. Right? Yeah. So you can access to the plug and recharge the device, right? Yeah.
Why not earn stuff? Why? We said we're gonna get you a computer, we're gonna get all these things. Why?
It's hard to.
Well, it's hard. You were gonna have every kind of thing that you'd want. You just earn it. You just had ice cream tonight. point. So why are you going to steal chocolate? You're getting cookies, you're getting ice cream, you're getting all these things. So why steal when you're getting all this stuff?
You go off the edge at school, you'll be done with school. You'll be in here homeschooling. And I told you that's a possibility. So go ahead and test me tomorrow by going to school and misbehaving or doing any shit you shouldn't do. Test me.
Is there a similar video for every other day of the week for the time frame that was recovered by Ring?
There is.
Now, we see that the Eastern Standard Time is on, is converted. Is there one video where there is not the Eastern Standard Time?
Yes.
Did you look at that and do the conversion for me?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that now quickly. We are going to look at the other videos, but just so when we get there, we know, is that the last day in the room, which is January 28th?
That's correct.
So the first video, that is the EPOC time for January 28th, 2022. Can you tell us, and I will keep track, what that very first time is?
Yeah, so I'm going to refer to my notes, but the time for that would be 11:21 and 35 seconds UTC. Converted to Eastern Standard Time, that would be 6:21 in the morning, 35 seconds.
Okay. And so 6:21 in the morning is the first video. What's the next? Go through what the next videos are. Yeah.
In chronological order?
Yeah.
Do you want me to give you the...
Just give us the conversion time to
the
Eastern
conversion
Standard Time.
times
Yes.
to Eastern Standard? Okay.
Right.
So the next one's going to be 6:43 and 7 seconds Eastern Standard.
Okay, go ahead.
The next one would be 6:44, 13 seconds.
Right?
The next would be 7:10 and 4 seconds AM.
Welcome, Mayor.
The next would be 7:20 and 44 seconds Eastern.
Go ahead.
The next would be 7:21 and 50 seconds AM, and that's Eastern Standard Time. The following would be 7:57 and
Right.
23 seconds Eastern Standard Time, AM. The next would be 8:31 and 8 seconds Eastern Standard Time, again in the morning. And then finally, 9:02 and 38 seconds Eastern Standard Time, and that would be in the morning still.
And then that's the last time that the victim in this case is depicted in the room.
Correct.
Is 9:02 a.m. on January 28th, 2022.
That's correct. Yes.
There's one other one that's missing, right?
Yes.
Which on January 17th,
16.
16th?
Yes.
And what time is missing on that one?
So on the first video, the time that's missing is 5:23 and 44 seconds AM Eastern Standard Time.
All the rest of them have the appropriate Eastern Standard Time, right?
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about the fact that there were some things that were picked up on additional cameras as well, right?
Yes.
I want to show you a few videos.
I forgot to add one of the things that I edited out a few minutes of. It sounded like rocks. It was a lot of background noise, but it sounded like rocks being moved. And I think that was an outdoor camera monitoring him doing whatever labor, quote unquote, that he was doing outdoors.
We've heard so far in this case that on occasion the victim in this case was asked to rake or pick up shells outside the home. Was some of that recorded or found on some of the ring camera videos that the return came back on?
Yes.
Permission to approach.
Granted.
Your Honor, will be states 18. Your Honor.
All right, everyone may be seated. All right, Ms. Coakley, you may continue.
I showed you what's going to be marked for evidence. It states 18, which, am I 18? Am I right, Madam Clerk?
Your next exhibit is 18.
Thank you so much. 18, one of them was a video, I showed you two different USBs, correct?
Correct.
And did you recognize the videos in both?
Yes.
Are they from the doorbell angle camera from the Ferriter's home?
Yes.
And they're just like a selected 4 or 5 videos for each of the 2 topics, correct?
Yes.
And the first one that's going to be marked as States 18 involves the shells. Are those the true and accurate videos that you received from Ring?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move them into evidence as States 18.
Okay, Ms. Murad, you're going to renew your objection made at sidebar? All right, so the court's ruling at sidebar will remain the same, so the court receives and accepts States Exhibit 18 in evidence over objection as stated at sidebar.
And States 19, you reviewed as well. Does that also show a similar view, but this time the child, instead of with the shells, is raking leaves?
Yes.
And it also shows him trying to get in the house and it not being open.
Overruled.
Yes.
Are they true and accurate depictions of the videos that you received from Ring?
Yes.
Now, these 2 video Ring cameras, we talked a lot about the date and time associated with the videos in the room. Did Ring provide the data for the date and time for these videos?
I did not observe date and time associated files.
And the file name for these, is it the same way where we could just put the file name in, or is it a different, they use some sort of different file naming system for that?
It is not the same format as the previously observed files. It has a unknown to me reason of creation. It is not the epoch or the Unix timestamp that we had previously gone over.
Good night.
Now publishing January 8th, 2022.
Attorney? Still put that. We'll plug that in for you.
Data for the date and time for these videos.
I did not observe date and time associated files.
And the file name for these, is it the same way?
I don't think they deleted them. I think that they kept them because he said that they were sorted in individual folders and everything for, here, let me do this different. They were sorted in individual folders and they were, like some of them were renamed is the way I understood it.
You can't tell.
Sorry guys, I'm unorganized.
You don't click on something by accident. Tell me how.
I thought I had this done, but apparently I screwed it up. No, the older daughter that testified is adopted.
So you've not done it within the whole time?
No, I closed Chrome and it kicked me out
Why'd you close Chrome?
because of closing out stuff.
What stuff?
All the things like the bottom.
You can waste my time, but I have to search stuff. I'll find it, school will find it, or I'll eventually spend time to find it. But I don't want to waste my time searching what you've already been doing. Have you been doing anything you shouldn't have done?
No. Holocaust and stuff.
Huh?
Holocaust, math.
What were you doing on it tonight?
It's personalized. That's mathematician.
You're supposed to do that?
Well, it's allowed. Everyone that could have it.
I think it's loud.
It's allowed. Like, it's not restricted.
Why?
Because I was trying to get back to the portal.
You don't click on something by accident. by accident. You're very deliberate when you do it. So what I can do is bring this to your IT people tomorrow at school, because it says suspicious activity reporting app. I'll let them know that something's happening there with this. Should I do that?
No, that I pressed. When you go to the new tab, I pressed STBC bookmarks at the top, and it led me there. And then I realized it was the wrong thing, so I clicked on the other one, the portal.
Automatically routes your tip report appropriately.
There.
He said he was done with his homework, but he was still on his computer because it's something to do.
What were you searching?
This customization thing.
What?
Customization thing.
You're supposed to be doing that on your Chromebook?
Restricted, does that mean you should take $10?
No.
Right.
So you finished all your homework?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right, let's take the Chromebook then. Let's take it. So you say you're searching customization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you go to the bathroom real quick? I'll walk with it.
Did you get, hey Tim, did you, I said the email open? Did the school email open?
Anything else for him? Did you turn the air on for him?
I did, yes.
Okay.
There, I'll give him a minute. There you go. Sleeping any better? A little bit?
I don't.
You can't tell.
Okay. I'll see tonight, but I don't think I'm sleeping that much better.
Right?
Yeah.
Good. That's a lesson, right?
Yeah.
Alright, good night.
You turned the light on? Okay, back out.
Now publishing January 10th, 2022.
Dirty? Let's go.
Does anybody else think part of the problem is this kid is smarter than most of the adults around him and he's bored and not stimulated enough and is just getting in trouble because he does things to get attention from people, like bringing a knife to school because he can't get the right attention at home, and he's, hacking into computers and everything else because he can. I mean, I don't know. That's the impression I get. What do you guys think?
You should make your bed.
Ms. Black, are we at a stopping off point for a 10-minute break? Let's pause it. Let me go ahead and take a 10-minute break now. You may be seated. All right, before we get started, let me just make an announcement. I've been advised that there have been some instances of people taking photos with their cell phones or electronics in the courtroom. That is expressly and specifically prohibited unless you are a member of the press. It's been pre-authorized to either video these proceedings or to take still photography through our publicity coordinator. Anybody else is not authorized to be using their electronics in the courtroom unless you are an attorney or involved in either the state's legal team or the defense's legal team. Anybody else should turn your electronics off at this point, because I can't have anybody violating the rules and taking photographs or audio recordings of these proceedings when they've already been expressly advised prior to this that they shouldn't be doing that. So that's the court's ruling. Unless you, again, are a member of the either state or the defense legal team, or an attorney, or a member of the press that's already been pre-authorized to take video or still photographs. Everyone else should have your electronics turned off at this point. Ms. Black, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir. I did want to address one issue when we were at sidebar about the timing on the videos. It came to my attention that the timing is in the UTC time. So in the later hours, when it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 8 o'clock, it converts because it's 5 hours ahead.
So it's still correct?
Yes.
So you'll deal with that in closing arguments and explain it if that's something that needs to be explained. But you concur with that explanation, Mr. Waheed?
I do know that that's the explanation, but
You don't,
I also know that the state would, yes, I agree with that.
okay, all right. So if that's something that either legal team, all electronics are to be turned off at the
17, and we are on January 10th, 2022.
And Ms. Black, just let them know about the UTC time. I think now's an appropriate time to let them know so they can process it contemporaneous to seeing it.
So before every snapshot, there is what's the UTC time, which is 5 hours ahead of what the Eastern time is. So on the bottom, you will see the Eastern time, and then on top, you may see that it may be ahead a day, but that's just because of the timing. This is the time zone. This is still the same day.
Okay, all right, you may continue then.
100%. Exactly.
Let's go out here, get your socks, get your clothes. Just go through the day?
Yeah.
Let's go. Get your shoes, where your shoes at?
Over there.
You're doing work in here, so you can't go in there. So just grab your stuff and go out in the car. Where are your shoes?
They're over by the shelf.
Okay, I'll go get them. Get your room there. This is dirty. Okay, go down to the garage. Back in my car? Yeah, let's go to the car. I'll come with you. I'm gonna just get Mary and I'll be right there. Okay. Let me get Mary, okay? I'll come with you.
Let's go.
Can you put that on pause, Ms. Black? Let me have counsel approach, please. All right, you may continue with the publishing.
You want to take this thing to the next level? Let's do it. Let's do it in Florida too. Let's do it in Florida too. Let's go.
Get pajamas. Here's the stuff you can do. Go get pajamas. Do you hear me? It wasn't very longer?
Yeah.
Okay. Both of those. In the morning, yeah. Back. 30? 30. You're still using those wipes for your face?
I don't know where they are. Good night.
Okay, so there was a couple more, I don't know, I guess, minutes of sound. And then there was a cross-examination of the records guy, but it was only like a minute long. So it's posted if you want to watch it, but I'm not going to pull it up because I don't have access to it at the moment. But this is he's a forensic psych and also a professor from Brown University. And this is like the big one. Oh, yeah, it doesn't work when you start it at the end. All right. Listen to that for a minute. I uploaded the wrong one.
Get too close. Let's go.
Ready? You ready? Can you replay? Will you turn up your air during the day?
And did you, are you licensed in Florida?
I am, yes.
And what about Rhode Island?
Yes, I'm also licensed in Rhode Island.
Now, you mentioned that you're currently a professor at Brown University. What did you do in between that fellowship at the University of Florida and then going to Brown?
I was on the faculty at University of Florida for, I'm going to say about 15 years, 10 or 15 years, where I became a associate professor. Then I went to University of South Florida, and I helped. I went there really to start a forensic psychiatry fellowship program, which we did. I was there at University of South Florida for about 5 years. I was a professor there, and then for the last 14 years, I've been at Brown University, also where I was recruited to go up and to build a forensic psychiatry program.
Do you treat patients?
I do, yes.
And you said that one of your areas is child psychiatry. So are the predominantly your patients children?
Yes, most of my patients are children. I also treat adults with a variety of mental conditions.
Now, as a professor, are you involved in teaching in the areas that we talk about?
I am, yes.
Tell us what you, broadly, what that means you do as far as the teaching responsibilities.
I give some lectures to students more in a lecture format, but a lot of my teaching is clinical instruction. And for instance, we have forensic psychiatry fellows who come and work with our faculty for a year in a training program. They become trained in forensic psychiatry. So they'll do cases with us, different types of cases. And then also we give them seminars every week, as well as they'll go to a law school class for a semester one afternoon a week. We participate in that as well with them.
So sorry to interrupt. Do you do any academic research or publish in the areas of child psychiatry or forensic psychiatry?
Yes, I have regularly been involved in research during my career.
And peer-reviewed scientific publications, that's what we're talking about?
Yes.
Now, as part of your work, do you also sometimes get involved to give an expert opinion in legal cases?
I do, yes.
Does that include in criminal cases?
It does.
Have you testified here in Palm Beach County before on criminal cases?
Yes, I have. I believe on at least several occasions.
And is that true in other places around the country as well?
Yes.
And so you have offered your expert opinion on topics involving psychiatry in places around the country. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is.
Now, did I reach out to you in this case to see if you could assist us in providing an expert opinion?
Yes, you did.
And did you agree to be involved and to review some of the items in this case?
Yes.
As part of that, did you review the witness statements that were given by the Ronan Ferriter and his sister, Fiona Ferriter?
Yes, I did.
And did you also have the opportunity to review their depositions?
Yes.
What about police reports? Did you have the opportunity to review some of the police reports and forensic evaluations done of the children in this case?
I did.
Did you also have the opportunity to review some of the videos that were captured from the Ring camera in this case?
I did, yes. I believe I reviewed in the neighborhood of 40 videos.
Now, did you also review some school records related to the child in this case, as well as some prior treatment records by other providers?
Yes, I did.
Now, I wanted to, based on your review of all of the documentation in this case, of the documentation that you reviewed in this case, were you able to reach a professional opinion as to whether or not the treatment that Ronan Ferriter received from his parents in this case was harmful?
Yes, I did. I felt it was severely harmful and very psychologically damaging to Ronan.
And why is that?
It was a long-standing pattern of harsh, cruel, and demeaning actions toward this child, as well as close to 3 years of essentially solitary confinement when he was not in school, as well as really sadistic punishments while he was locked away in the room. For instance, withholding meals if he misbehaved, taking his one book away as punishment, which is the one thing he had to do in the room towards the end, turning the lights out to punishment, as punishment. And in fact, he talked about being afraid of the dark. And when the lights would go off when he was being punished, he would pull the sheet over his head and really feel terror.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not this type of treatment of a child by the parents is malicious?
It's malicious, it's cruel, there's really...
Overall,
You can go ahead. Do you have an opinion as to whether or not this type of treatment is malicious?
Yes, my opinion is it's malicious, it's cruel. I can't think of any other way to describe it more accurately.
Now, even in cases where this punishment may be in response to maybe a negative or unwanted behavior of a child, is that change at all your opinion? If the child did something wrong and then the parent, this is how they are punishing them, does that change your opinion on whether or not this type of action by the defendants is malicious and cruel?
No, there's no set of circumstances concerning a child's behavior that would justify this sort of really torturous behavior.
Would this type of behavior as punishment or as a punitive measure, or would it result in a positive behavior modification by the child?
No, if I was asked that in a theoretical way, I would predict this sort of behavior to cause the child's reactions, the behavior, their psychological state to deteriorate even further.
And what kind of behaviors might you see as a result of that, hypothetically, in a child who is subjected to this type of behavior, this type of treatment?
It could go in a whole lot of directions that we see in children who are abused, children psychologically, emotionally abused, neglected, but it can go from depression, anxiety, to self-injury, where they maybe even start cutting themselves, to trying to commit suicide, to aggression, to headbanging, to problems with peers, problems with concentration, nightmares, sleep disturbances. The list is very long in abused children, how different children will manifest the signs of abuse.
Could it result in an increase of the type of behavior that is that the parent considers bad or inappropriate?
Yes, it can cause the child to have a more irritable mood. They can become aggressive with their peers. They can become aggressive with family members. Yes, they can they may often will try to run away.
Now, is there any justification or possibility of a positive result from this type of punishment of a child? This type of treatment?
No.
Now, what can you tell us about the type of psychological impact this type of treatment can have?
Again, it's a long list, but do you want me to kind of focus more
broadly
on Ronan, or?
I want you to say broadly first, and then we'll talk more specifically.
So it can have, in general, it can cause more internalizing symptoms where the child will become depressed or withdrawn or isolating of themselves from others, or it can go the other way, externalizing, where they might start acting out, running away, being aggressive. It can affect their schoolwork, where they can't concentrate, their grades start going down. It can cause a lot of problems with them being able to interact positively and in a good way socially with their peers. They may have problems on the playground. They may have problems with even just following the general rules of the school, whatever that might be.
Now, concentrating on kind of some of the videos that you were able to see of his reactions in the room. Anything about that you think was indicative of a psychological impact on the victim while he's in the room?
Well, yes, it's consistent with a child who has post-traumatic stress disorder. There was when the parent, his father, would come in the room and approach him, he would stiffen up, he would lower his head, you could barely hear his speech when he did talk, and he seemed to be in a very high state of fear. But that tenseness is though the adrenaline's flowing, and he's afraid of another abusive episode occurring or being harmed, or he said he was even afraid of being killed.
Now, do this type of treatment of a child, can it stunt their intellectual growth?
Yes, it can.
Can it stunt their psychological growth?
It can, yes.
Is there a reasonable likelihood when a person engages in this type of behavior towards a child that there is going to be psychological injury or mental injury as a result?
You said, is there
a likelihood?
Yes, there is a substantial likelihood.
Now, in this case, did you see, based on the evidence that you were able to review, is there a pattern of isolation of the child?
Yes, he for nearly 3 years was isolated in the cell for the better part of each day. I mean, as far as hours, it sounds like when he wasn't at school, let's say he's at school for 8 hours, he's then in the box for 14, 16 hours a day.
Now,
on a daily basis, so a very much established pattern.
Did you, and I think you say isolation, is it fair to say that there is also a pattern of confinement here of the child?
Yes, they're essentially one and the same in this case, it would seem.
Were you able to observe a pattern of a deprivation of the child?
Yes, there was emotional deprivation. There was physical deprivation, there was intellectual or cognitive deprivation where he wasn't really provided much in the way of anything to stimulate his mind or to entertain himself. I mean,
Is isolation, confinement, and deprivation considered an acceptable way to punish a child?
no, it's not. It would be counter-therapeutic to disciplining a child. But we're not talking about a 5-year-old who might have a temper tantrum and you want to give them a timeout for 5 minutes in their room. I mean, that's something, timeouts are an accepted form of discipline.
So does it make a difference, in your opinion, the duration of the isolation, confinement, and duration and deprivation?
Oh, it's a huge difference, sure. If it's a short duration for younger children, it can be appropriate. But again, I'm talking in terms of minutes, not hours. But in terms of doing it every day, day after day, for most of the day, there's just no comparison to, say, a short timeout with a younger child.
And even just looking at,
I have a question. Okay, I'm sitting here going through my head, like, they're going to do the which came first, him acting out or them disciplining him. But can you think of any circumstance where that would be acceptable? I know he just said, no, it's never acceptable, but he's getting paid to say that. Is there any circumstance where it would be acceptable to lock the child in the room the way that they did? Because I can't think of any, but maybe I'm missing something with some type of special needs or something along that line that would make it acceptable.
at the
Y'all are
time
smarter than me.
frame that happened in Florida, those 5 to 6 weeks, that amount of time
thank you,
frame, is that
Mom.
harmful?
Yes,
You're so
undoubtedly,
sweet.
it would be for about any child, I'm sure.
Now,
Puppy.
would you consider, or would it be correct to characterize what the treatment that he was subjected to as solitary confinement?
Yes.
Is solitary confinement within the psychological and psychiatric and medical community, is that something that is considered appropriate for a child?
No, and in fact, years ago, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, which I'm a member of, came out with a statement strongly arguing against children even in juvenile detention centers having solitary confinement because it's detrimental psychological impacts.
Is it considered damaging to brain development of a child?
It is, yes. That's another aspect of it, is that it can cause literally changes to one's brain structure.
Now, even within the setting of a criminal justice system where it might be part of a child subjected to that in the criminal justice system, is it acceptable for them to be in long-term solitary confinement?
No, it is not.
Even in those circumstances of a criminal justice system, is a child, when confined to a cell, given access to water and facilities to relieve themselves?
Well, yes, it would be very different. There's a bed in the room, there's a toilet, there's a sink where they always have access to water, so they wouldn't be subject to a dehydration, for instance. There's officers where they can always call out to somebody if they need something. There's lighting. It would never be pitch black in a juvenile detention center, so they would not be.
Remember the line in the carpet right in your doorway, and you couldn't cross the line with your toes because that would be coming out of your room, but you could stand right there at the line?
Be subjected to that sort of sensory deprivation of being in a totally dark room for hours at a time. And they're served meals. There wouldn't be any holding back of meals as some sort of punishment for a child into the detention center.
Now, discussing the isolation specifically, is there a detrimental impact to a child to be socially and physically isolated the way that Ronan Ferriter was from the rest of the family?
I'm sorry.
Is there a negative impact associated with the social and physical isolation?
Well, that's part of the trauma of this, is that he's he's kept from having a normal family environment where he comes out and is socializing with his peers and spending time with his parents and doing things together and having fun and just having a normal family experience. He's segregated as soon as he gets home, and the children all know he's in the box, but it's giving him the message that you're not valued, you're unloved, you're not important, you're not part of this family, you're being rejected.
Is it sending a message that he fundamentally is bad?
Yes, and that you're right, and that you're bad. You're not able to be part of this family because you're bad.
Now, during the course of reviewing the evidence in this case, did you become aware of whether or not his confinement in the structure in the garage was absolute? Was it at all times?
With infrequent exceptions, yes. I mean, he did occasionally have some after-school activities, as I understand, more so I think in Arizona than when he got to Florida, where he might be allowed to run track or do some track at school.
And he went to school?
Yes.
You saw that. And there were, did you find that there were some also infrequent examples of when he was allowed to interact with the family?
Yes, he went to, for instance, siblings softball practices. They did go out to, I think they went out to dinner a few times.
Does the isolation and confinement and deprivation, does it have to be absolute, like at all times, in order for it to be harmful?
No, it doesn't, no.
In reaching your opinion that the conduct that this defendant engaged in towards his son was harmful and was malicious and cruel, did you take into consideration the fact that there were occasions where he wasn't in the room?
I did, yes.
Now, I want to talk...
It's the totality of it, that he's literally for 3 years spending most of his life, the majority of it, in solitary confinement with very little stimulation and interaction when he is in there.
Now, I want to talk for a second about sensory deprivation, which I think you mentioned. What is sensory deprivation?
It's a lack of any kind of external stimuli, really, that is so important to adolescent development, like being able to go out and play with your peers or your friends after school, or ride a bike around the neighborhood, or throw a baseball, or come out and eat dinner with your family, or have some things to play with, like a computer or an iPad, or games, or Legos, or something to do to occupy your mind.
Now, what kind of impact can that type of sensory deprivation have?
Well, in extreme cases, children can literally become psychotic and lose contact with reality, but it very predictably causes severe psychological problems, again, like depression or repetitive behaviors like self-injury or self-stimulation behaviors that somehow you start doing things to stimulate yourself because you need something to occupy your mind after a while when you're in a locked room with nothing to do hour after hour after hour.
Now, what about being in the dark? How does that impact someone? I mean, is that bad?
In general, it would be frightening for, I believe, any child to be locked in a room and have the lights totally turned out. But even more so when that happens and you know you're going to be in that room with little or no ability to contact anybody if something bad happens. I mean, you can't even come out and use the bathroom. You have to find your way to a bucket in a dark room I guess it's in the corner, and try to figure out how to go to the bathroom in the dark in a bucket. And then you're going to be with that bucket for the remainder of the night, depending on what time you use the bucket.
Is that type of forced sensory deprivation, being forced to sit in the dark and have no control over the lights, is that harmful?
Yes, it's a form of psychological trauma. It's really a form of torture to do that to a child.
Now, you mentioned the bucket. I want to talk a little bit about that. What kind of impact, or how can that be perceived by a child who is forced to use that as a way in which to relieve themselves?
It's mean, it's degrading, it's unsanitary, it's extremely unpleasant to, at least, to have to be in the room and then locked in a room with your own excrement with no way to do anything about it.
Now, can being subject to that kind of humiliating and degrading lifestyle impact cause a psychological injury to a child?
Psychological what?
Injury.
Yes, it definitely can. It's psychological abuse is the simplest way to put it, and it's also really a form of medical neglect because of the unsanitary aspects of it.
Now, would you say, or do you have an opinion as to whether or not these specific factors are cruel, demeaning, and injurious? I think you already said that for the having to use the facilities in a bucket. What about giving little stimulation or limiting the stimulation of the child?
That's another form of psychological abuse when you limit an adolescent's abilities and access to intellectual or academic stimulation when they're at home.
What about
really stunting their brain development and their intellectual development?
What about in situations, or what about when there is extreme control or lack of access to food, where their access to food or snacks is extremely limited or controlled by someone other than the child?
So adolescence is a time when you're supposed to be developing increasing independence and increasing ability to take care of yourselves, including food choices and learning to feed yourself and prepare foods. And this is the opposite of what we see with Ronan, who gets fed separate from the family, and he gets fed typically leftovers. He gets the same breakfast about every morning. It looks like a banana and a piece of bread with some peanut butter smeared on it. So it's really ongoing, another example of the psychological abuse.
Ms. Coakley, before you proceed, let me have counsel sidebar.
Now, I want to talk for a second about the impacts that harsh, cruel, demeaning, and injurious treatment of a child can have. Can that have an impact on the child's view of morality?
Yes, it would be an important part of how they learn to be moral, responsible human beings. Really, is a big part of that is modeled by your parents. So the modeling he got was certainly had some serious moral problems, in that it's giving him various messages like violence is okay, and isolating people is okay, and withholding food is okay, and being choked is okay. Those sort of things. These are the most important role models in your life, or your parents.
Can that create a distorted view of what is morally appropriate behavior?
Very much so, yes. After months or years of this, it becomes normal to the child, despite how pathological or abnormal it is. They begin to see this as just normal, a normal part of life.
Now, can that distortion of appropriateness also extend to the child's view of themselves?
Yes, it can. And one of the ways it might do that is that the child internalizes being treated like this and sees themselves as the bad, responsible one with they have the moral problems. It's their fault that this is happening, clearly, because it keeps happening to them. They think it must be in some way my fault.
Even in situations where there's kind of like pervasive, ongoing abuse or trauma inflicted by a parent caregiver, can a child who is subject to that still have affection for the abuser?
Yes, that's very common.
Why does that occur? Or how does that occur, especially in a situation like this?
Some of it is it's built into children that if you provide them care and you take care of them and give them a place to live and feed them and get them to school, that sort of thing, the attachment system does kick in and they connect to that person. They form a bond.
So a child can come away from an abusive situation and still have affection or allegiance to the abuser.
Yeah, that's very, very typical.
Now, I want to talk for a second about stealing as something that it can occur within is that something, a behavior that can result in children that have been subject to abuse or neglect?
Yes, you're stealing, you're talking about.
Stealing,
yes,
yeah.
And particularly in this case, kids who've had that early psychosocial deprivation and really lack of adequate parenting in their first couple of years of life, or a year and a half in his case.
Is it when a child is exhibiting that type of behavior, especially when there's a known history of some kind of neglect or abuse, is it therapeutic or appropriate treatment to address that behavior to deprive the child of access to some of the items?
You mean which items?
Like if a child is stealing food or candy, if that is something that occurs and that's something that's been noticed, in order to address that behavior, therapeutically, what would be the appropriate way to address it?
Well, to try to talk to them about it and try to understand and explore their feelings about why this behavior is continuing, and then help them gain insight into the fact that you did have a very difficult early childhood, and kids like that will have this urge to keep hoarding and taking food, because in the back of their brain and at an instinctual survival level, they're thinking, I've got to keep getting food and hoard it, because at any point I could start going hungry again and there'll be nothing to eat. So to help them gain insight and to then give them interventions, or that's too strong of a word, but then to give them regular snacks and reassure them they're always going to be able to get snacks if they start really feeling that anxiety or need to eat something. So not restrict it, but let them know it's always here, and make that a reality. Not that you are going to have them eat 5 Big Macs a day, but you'd have to tailor what sort of meals and snacks you'd let them have.
Can that type of hoarding and inclination and kind of compulsive to get food, can that occur even in children that are otherwise well-fed and maybe not like starving? Who've had the previous trauma?
Yes, definitely, yes.
Now, is limiting or severely controlling a child's access to food and snacks and water, is that something that is a therapeutic treatment for this type of behavioral problem?
It's counter-therapeutic. It goes against the treatment, because you're teaching them it's true. Those very sort of primitive feelings you have that there's not enough to eat and food may not always be accessible, you're now keeping it a reality, instead of helping them get over that insecurity.
And so when you say it's counter-therapeutic, does that mean that it can make the behaviors actually worse?
Yes.
Overruled.
Does that mean that it could increase, or would that have what kind of impact would it have on the behaviors?
It reinforces it. It might increase it. It may just keep it, sustain it. It depends on the child, but I would not predict that would make it any better at all.
Now, you mentioned psychosocial deprivation and cognitive deprivation. What are those things?
So children really of any age, and probably it's true for adults too, but they need consistent caregiving, they need nurturance, they need support, they need affection, they need to be held or hugged. They need to be shown empathy so that they know that their needs are recognized and being met, so they can develop confidence and emotional security in themselves. So the pathological care would be really the opposite of those things.
What do you mean that the pathological care?
Well, the kind of parenting that you wouldn't want to see for a child who's come from this sort of early deprivation is care that wouldn't be supportive and consistent and nurturing and affectionate.
The type of care that you saw that occurred between January, that's on the videos between January 5th and January 28th, will you characterize that as supportive, caring, empathetic care?
No, I would see it as the opposite of those.
Okay, how would you describe it?
Unempathic, mean, frightening, not in any way trying to recognize what's going on with the child, but just for imposing your will in a harsh disciplinary fashion.
Now, Dr. Meyer, you're not, are you saying that like a parent can't yell at a child?
No, not at all.
Are you saying that a parent can't discipline a child if they do something that they behave in a way that's inappropriate?
No, you have to discipline children in an appropriate way, sure, for issues, misbehaviors.
Are you saying that a parent can't punish a child if they do something that requires punishment?
Prefer to use the term discipline. Punishment has somewhat of a negative connotation, but you could look at it as punishment, I suppose, if it's reasonable and mild.
Okay, so what is more appropriate and also developmentally appropriate for a child of this age, you would characterize as discipline? Discipline is more appropriate than punishment for a child, a 14-year-old child of this age?
Yes.
What's the difference, I guess, between what is appropriate and then what is harmful?
The simple answer would be what's in the best interest of the child, and is what you're doing, whatever it is it going to help the child learn why this problem is, why their behavior was not good? Is it going to help give them ideas or ways to not engage in this behavior in the future, give them alternatives, to turn it into a learning experience at the same time with enough discipline that it does get their attention if you think it needs it. I mean, some kids, they get a harsh word from a parent and they're good to go for a year. Other kids need a lot more hands-on intervention. It depends on the child's temperament and personality.
Now, I want to talk about kind of the impact that cognitive deprivation or intellectual deprivation can have on a child's creation of their own identity. How does that impact that?
It's sort of a couple different two different things there, but the deprivation has actually been shown in longer-term studies to lower children's IQ, their IQ scores, so their intelligence level doesn't rise as high as somebody who isn't deprived or mistreated over the years.
Now, in cases where children are subject to cognitive deprivation or intellectual deprivation, do you see instances of that child engaging in fantasy or lying? Or can you see that?
Yes.
Why does that happen?
Some kids will start engaging in fantasy thinking and make up stories, and it's a coping mechanism to try to sort of fill the void of having so little mental stimulation or intellectual or cognitive outlets. So they then begin creating their own stories and fantasies to sort of fill that hole.
Now, I want to talk about a child expressing frustration and anger. Is a child expressing frustration and anger the same thing as violence, necessarily?
No, not at all. But violence would be one sliver of children who are frustrated and angry. Some will act violently.
Now, during the course of the review of some of the videos, did you see a few videos where Ronan is expressing inside the room frustration or anger?
Yes. Or a great deal of emotional pain that he doesn't know how else to release, it seems like. Then when he starts just like tearing the posters off the wall or kicking his Legos around.
Now, just generally, outside of the specific facts of this case, is something like kicking Legos or screaming in frustration or tearing posters off the wall is for a 14-year-old child. Is that like a clinically significant type of anger or frustration just in general if a 14-year-old does that?
In and of itself, that's not necessarily a pathological or a behavior or some sign of serious mental illness. If it's infrequent and the child has really had a terribly, say, frustrating experience or something, they might come home and kick something on the floor. But no, in and of itself, no.
Could it be a completely normal expression of frustration or anger in a 14-year-old boy?
It could be, yes.
To react to maybe some kind of adverse experience or just whatever frustration it is?
Yes.
Now, in this type of situation, does that, Ronan being in that situation, locked in the room alone and having that type of response, does that tell you anything about how he's dealing with the trauma of the situation?
Well, he's only got a limited number of things he can do with all this angst and emotional pain and the effects of this mistreatment building up and building up. It's got to come out somehow. It always comes out one way or another in human beings. And it seems like in him, the only sort of outlets he's really got are to kind of throw things around or kick whatever's in the room that's left. He did become suicidal a couple times from it as well.
So the only...
Which would be another way that you could get those sort of feelings, unfortunately, a method to get those out or deal with them.
So in the room itself, the only control he has is over the immediate items in the room.
Sustain, rephrase, counsel.
In the room itself, what does he have the capacity or the agency to control?
What did he have?
Yeah, about his physical environment.
Well, very little, because he's in a box, and essentially the only other things in there are a bed and a sheet and a pillow and a desk, and I believe towards the end again one book.
Now, at some point there might be some discussion in this case about more specific situations when a child has more specific behavioral needs than an ordinary child, or and we might discuss reactive attachment disorder. Are you familiar with what that is?
Oh yes, I am.
What is it?
It's a diagnosis, a condition where a child is deprived, usually during the first 2 or 3 years at least of their life and earlier, of consistent, supportive, appropriate parenting. So they don't have regular nurturance or contact with a caregiver, a parent. So they don't have the chance to sort of form secure attachments to a parent or two, which is what they're programmed to do.
And then, so something has to occur, just so I'm understanding you correctly, something has to occur early in life that makes it difficult for where they weren't able to form an attachment.
Well, yes, they're not having responsive, tender care. They're being left alone for long periods of time. When they are fed, it might just be with a bottle a few times a day. Otherwise, they're left laying there unattended or with very little stimulation, and this results in their brain not developing properly, their emotional system not developing properly. Even physically, they don't grow as well. And moreover, their head size isn't even necessarily as big as isn't the size that it should be.
Now, in a child who does have an attachment disorder, is a child with this disorder necessarily violent towards themselves or others? Is that like something that always happens?
That's not actually a diagnostic criteria for reactive attachment disorder. Violence is not even one of the defining criteria or criterion of that.
Is there generally accepted, if a child does have some type of attachment disorder and specifically reactive attachment disorder, is there generally accepted therapeutic interventions within the scientific community to address that?
The main treatment that has been shown to work is to get the child out of the problematic, uncaring environment, the pathological environment, as quick as possible, and put them with either a foster family or a stable relative, or have them adopted into a good parenting situation. I mean, that's the treatment, and get them back on a normal course of development.
And so we're talking about a good parenting situation. Do you mean stable, nurturing, that addresses the child's needs?
Yes.
Now,
That works, and the majority of children with RAD, reactive attachment disorder, have substantially diminished or even resolution of their RAD symptoms over time.
Is it considered therapeutically acceptable or appropriate to isolate, confine, or deprive a child who might have a history that lends them to having an attachment disorder?
No, it's just what you wouldn't want to do to a child with reactive attachment disorder, because that isolation and lack of contact and lack of affection are the things that created it in the first place. So you want to undo that by doing the opposite to the child with good parenting.
Would it exacerbate any attachment issues if they were there to treat a child like Ronan Ferriter was treated?
Yes, it would. Yes, it wouldn't. Yes, simple answer.
Now, what about a child, you mentioned that, in your opinion, there were some indications that there was a complex post-traumatic stress disorder indicated here.
Yes.
Would this type of treatment in any way address or help a child with post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well, no, I believe that's the cause of him having post-traumatic stress disorder is the abusive treatment that he received.
Now, would this type of treatment worsen the behavior or increase symptoms?
Yes.
Now, did you, as part of this case, have the opportunity to review a deposition given by a Dr. Rappa?
I did.
And she made some opinions about this case as well, correct?
She did, yes.
Did you agree with any of the opinions that Dr. Rappa made?
I did. In particular, she did describe the behaviors that Ronan was experiencing, and the punishment, the isolation, the abuse as inappropriate and unacceptable. She referred to Ronan having complex post-traumatic stress disorder, partly from his experiences in Vietnam when he was in the orphanage, but I don't believe that would really add up, because PTSD is from being traumatized, be it physical abuse or a car accident or being caught in a hurricane or whatever it might be, or seeing something terrible happen to a family member. But being neglected and left alone doesn't cause post-traumatic stress disorder. So I saw nothing in the records that he had experienced any early traumas in his first couple years of life when he was in Vietnam, year and a half.
So you would be in agreement with Dr. Rappa that there are indicators that the victim in this case has experienced trauma?
Definitely, yes.
But the source of that trauma is a little bit of a disagreement, if I'm understanding you correctly.
If I'm understanding her deposition correctly, yes.
But would you agree with her opinion that regardless of the source of the trauma, this is not the way that a child with PTSD should be treated?
Well, right, because you're continuing to inflict the trauma on the child, and the PTSD comes from the trauma, so you're just doing nothing but worsening the child's PTSD with more and more of the same traumatic experiences.
I think we talked about, in general, a child, that this would be harmful. If a child has specific because of their history, has behavioral issues or maybe even a medical diagnosis. Does that change whether or not this is an appropriate type of punishment for a child?
I can't come up with any kind of explanation that would justify the treatment Ronan went through as appropriate.
The fact that there might be indications that because of his history and because of his treatment that he was, vulnerable or psychologically complex, does that increase the risk to him psychologically to be subjected to this type of treatment?
Yes, above and beyond being especially vulnerable given he is a child, yes, that would even increase the risk more.
That's all the questions I have.
Cross?
Good afternoon, doctor.
Good afternoon.
Let me start with I have your list of testimony in cases, civil and criminal. It's a pretty extensive list. You've testified in Palm Beach County before, correct?
Yes.
And looks like all but one defendant, all were for the state. Is that correct?
I haven't reviewed it, but I'll take your word for it.
I'm happy to have you review it if you want.
I trust you.
All right. And can you tell me what you're being compensated for your testimony here today?
I'm sorry?
How much are you being compensated for your testimony?
I'm being compensated for my time, but $350 an hour.
All right. And how much time have you put into the preparation of your testimony here today? Approximately.
Preparation for testimony?
I'm going to break it down. Yes, testimony.
I would say in the neighborhood of 5 hours.
All right. And in addition to that, any other preparation that you did, how much time did you put in?
Reviewing the records, I have a sheet on my office desk. I'm going to estimate it's probably in the ballpark of probably 8 hours, 9 hours of record review to get through all the materials, which I tried to reread as much as I could in the last day or two, because there's a lot of information.
Yeah, and we'll get to what you reviewed in a minute, but I appreciate your answer. I'm looking at your CV, very extensive, thick CV, because it has all the publications that you wrote, plus those which you've contributed to, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to go through a few here. I noticed, going back a little ways, in '94 you wrote one called Sexual Homicide by Adolescents.
Yes.
Staying with the 90s, '95 you wrote one called The Psychopathology, Biopsychopathology Factors, Crime Characteristics, and Classification of 25 Homicidal Youth.
Yes.
Staying with the 90s, you wrote one called The Psychopathology and Personality in Juvenile Sexual Homicide Offenders.
Yes.
In 2000, you wrote one with a co-author called Anger, Experience, and Styles of Expression Among Juvenile Sexual Homicide Offenders.
Yes.
Jump forward a little. 2002, I see one, The Sexual Assault of Boys Incarcerated in Jails.
Yes.
(2005) Personality Comorbidity in Adolescent Females with ADHD.
Yes.
I know you wrote that with others. I'm just trying to move it along, though. There's one that you wrote with somebody else in 2006, The Motivation Behind Serial Sexual Homicide. Is it sex, power, and or control or anger?
Yes.
2008, The Relationship Between Serial Sexual Murder and Autoerotic Asphyxiation.
Yes.
I tried that word twice and didn't get it. Jumping forward a little, 2012, adolescent parricide and psychopathy.
Psychopathy, yes.
Psychopathy, thank you. What's parricide?
The murder of a parent by a child.
You wrote a book as well,
I did, yes.
which is hard to get, but I got your book.
It's out of print.
It's out of print, but, someone still had it. It's called Juvenile Sexual Homicide. It's a 2002 book.
Yes.
And you've also contributed in chapters in other books, correct?
I have.
So for example, Current Perspectives on Conduct Disorder, and that was for the Adolescent Medicine State of the Art Review.
Yes.
Serial Offending in Childhood.
Yes.
The Juvenile Justice System, Delinquency, and the Juvenile Court.
Yes.
So you've written extensively on, seems a lot of your focus is on when juveniles commit crimes. That's a bulk of your work of study, correct?
Really, it's been more in the area of homicide, and often, probably the majority of the homicide research I've done has been with children, meaning people under the age of 18.
Who commit homicides.
Yes.
And you're, in those articles I've looked at and in your book, you examine the types of maybe common traits or commonalities that might help inform one on a child who's growing up that might commit crimes.
Well, yeah, you hope that it would have some impact on predicting it in children to avoid or help cut down on the number of murders in the future. Yes, that would be the ultimate aim.
So and in a couple of the articles, and in fact in your book, you go through some checklists of the types of those common factors, correct?
Yes.
Pulling out of your book, let's see here.
Good approach. All right, you may continue, Mr. Wahid. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. You talked a lot about psychopathy on your direct. There is a thing called a PCLR, correct?
Yes.
And what is that?
That is the psychopathy checklist, and it's 20 items that you rate to get an idea of how much of a really a criminal personality they have.
And
it's a score of 0 to 40.
And some of those items on the checklist are.
Let me have your approach. All right, Mr. Wahid, you may proceed.
So, again, on direct examination, you discussed psychopathy, correct?
I don't recall that I did.
Did you make any opinion today about connecting psychopathy with what happened in this case?
In the defendant?
Yes.
you mean, did I rate the level of psychopathy in Mr. Ferriter?
Nope. Did you say that the types of environment that that Ty was in this situation, that he had at his home, that it could have it has an impact on a child's psychopathy?
As I recall, I used the word psychopathology, meaning mental illness, not psychopathy, something very different.
All right, so the objection sustained. You need to move on, Mr. Wade.
Let me ask you about things you reviewed. You reviewed, so the state provided you a list of items, correct?
Yes,
About 95 pages of items, included witness statements.
yes,
When you say witness statements, did that include the statements the witnesses made during the trial?
no,
Did you observe those or read those in any way?
no,
And when I'm saying witnesses, I'm being specific to RF and FF, Ronan and Fiona.
forgive me, I've been using his first name.
Yes.
Should I say RF?
It can be confusing a little on the names, so I'm going to go with Ronan.
Okay,
So Ronan or Fiona. You did not watch or hear or read those trial testimonies.
what I had was the child protection team interviews, and then his statements to the police in the beginning, and then their depositions I read as well.
Okay. And you were provided by the defense a list of other items electronically. Did you review any of those?
I believe I made it through all of those.
Okay.
A lot of them were repeats of what I had received from the state attorney's office.
Sure, that's possible. So that included Ronan's early childhood records.
Yes,
It included his school records,
yes,
and that would also be from Basis Academy, correct?
yes,
And that would also include those emails between the teacher and the parents?
yes,
You also reviewed disciplinary records and other school records from Immaculate Heart?
yes, I did.
You also reviewed clinical summary in April of 22 from Kenny Miller?
Yes,
Okay. And that was on the reactive attachment disorder issue, correct?
yes,
You also reviewed the records of Dr. Thomas Rickenbacker?
I did.
You reviewed Ronan's other medical records, pediatric medical records?
Yes,
Did you review any of the photographs?
I did.
Okay. Did you review the family counseling associate records?
Yes,
And there were some other records in there, though, that might go beyond the scope of what you testified to. So if they come up, I'll come back to those.
okay.
You did not actually evaluate Ronan, correct?
I did not.
And you never asked to evaluate Ronan?
I asked if it was possible. Yes, I did.
And what were you told?
Let me have you approach on that.
I can reword it.
Okay, reword it in a way it does involve hearsay.
Sure. Based on the information you received, you then could not evaluate, you believe you could not evaluate Ronan?
True.
All right. And so obviously without actually evaluating Ronan, you can't do anything in terms of diagnosis of him.
Based on the extensive records, my observations of him on the videotapes, teacher observations, et cetera, I believe he has PTSD.
Well, is that your independent diagnosis or based on somebody else's diagnosis?
It's mentioned on occasion in the records, but my independent assessment would be that he does have PTSD, yes.
Well, but as a psychiatrist, is it not correct that you ethically under the rules are not allowed to make a diagnosis of an individual without actually conducting an examination and an evaluation on your own? Under Section 7.32 of the Principles of Medical Ethics for the American Psychiatric Association Ethics Committee.
It's not a hard and fast rule, and in fact, in forensic psychiatry, sometimes we're asked to review records of someone who has passed away from one reason or another, and try to come up and with a diagnostic assessment.
Ronan is not someone who's passed away, though, correct?
Correct.
And when you say it's not a hard and fast rule, it's actually a written rule, though, correct?
Could we go over the language of it?
Sure. In order to arrive at it.
If he's going to teach him of it and show it to him.
Among the topics you discussed was that Ronan was allegedly being deprived of snacks, correct?
More so meals, I believe we talked about, that sometimes meals would be held if they thought he was angry, or if they felt he was misbehaving in some other way, they might withhold a meal.
Okay, so we'll get to meals. Well, you also mentioned snacks, so I just want to go in order. So let me ask you, you reviewed the family counseling records, right? And that goes back, that starts essentially September 23rd of 2015. And Ronan is brought by his parents, and the chief complaint is he gets triggered and angry, that he has a low frustration tolerance.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is just him reading hearsay.
Sustained.
Isn't it true that there were a number of complaints that the parents came to the family counseling services folks with, which included what you were talking about with the RID, which was the hoarding of food, taking food from other kids, that sort of stuff?
Ms. Martin, the counselor, said I believe she was considering RAD.
Right.
As a diagnosis.
Yeah, so this is now
Kathleen Martin was the counselor.
Correct. I don't want to talk over you, so just when you're done, I'll then go. And in that first visit, though, one of the issues that was, or facts that was given to Ms. Martin was this taking food from kids, hoarding food, that issue.
I believe that's in the records. I don't remember the exact timing.
Okay. I'm happy to refresh your memory. It's right in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can
Thanks.
approach Mr. Wade.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And one of the complaints as well, I feel like I need to give you a copy of this because I'm going to do a lot of walking now. One of the complaints as well initially was that Ronan would actively defy or refuse to comply with requests from authority figures, parents, siblings. Parents and siblings are stressed by the yelling and temper tantrums, right?
Yes.
All right. So as a result of a series of meetings with Ms. Martin, one of the diagnoses that she had made was a thing called oppositional defiant disorder.
You can approach. All right, the objection is sustained. Mr. Waheed, you may continue. we've been going about an hour. Is this a good time to take a break, or you want to go for a little bit longer and tell me what a good stopping off point is?
I can just go for a little longer.
All right, so you tell me when you're at a good break point.
Based on your review of the records, are you aware that that Ronan was also diagnosed at some point with oppositional defiant disorder?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's sort of describes what it is by the title, but it's children who are beyond normal in the sense of defying rules, being oppositional, stubborn, saying things that irritate other people.
And based on what was in the record up until late 2015, would you have agreed with that diagnosis?
I'd really want to know more as to what was going on in his life at that time. And I just don't have the detail to really feel confident on that one way or the other.
Sure. However, would it be enough for you, based on what's in the record, to at least say that that would have been an appropriate differential diagnosis at the time?
Well, there's a lot of reasons kids can be defiant and screaming and going after snacks and sneaking them, that sort of thing, and stealing food from other children at school. So I really want to know more.
All right. So that information, though, based on the record, was passed on to the parents, right? That diagnosis was given to the parents, correct?
I don't know, I assume.
Well, you have it in the records, correct, that you reviewed?
Sustained. If you know, you can answer, sir.
I don't know what Ms. Martin said to the parents about the diagnosis.
Would a document from her report help refresh your recollection?
Well, you asked me if they passed it on to the parents. So
Yes.
if that would help me, yes.
Sustained.
Based on your review of the records, was there any advice given as to how to handle that diagnosis?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained. Let me have you approach on that, Mr. Wahid. Objection sustained. You may continue, Mr. Wahid.
If hypothetically a child's diagnosed with ODD, what would you recommend to parents as treatment?
Objection, relevance.
The hypothetical.
Sustained. Even a hypothetical still has to be relevant. So unless you want to argue the relevancy at sidebar, you can move on.
I would like to do that.
All right, so let's approach again. All right, the objection is withdrawn. Do you need the question restated for you, sir?
I'll just,
Go ahead and restate it.
what would be the treatment you would recommend for ODD, oppositional defiance disorder?
In general, learning as much as you can about the ODD symptoms and where they're happening and what's happening, and is it happening everywhere, or is it happening just at home? And then how long has it been occurring? And then once you kind of get a real understanding of it, then it might be approached with individual therapy, or just be meeting with a child, or you might be doing parent training and working with the parents, and or you might also do family sessions where you meet with the child and the parents to work on the oppositional defiant behavior. And sometimes if it's real, I guess, really problematic and you're not getting anywhere with those treatments, you could consider medications.
A medication like, is it clonidine? It's a
Clonidine?
Clonidine.
Possibly, yes. You could try that.
Okay.
Yes.
And is your understanding that that was ever tried on Ronan?
That was tried for, I believe, ADHD.
But it was tried on him.
Yes. And sometimes children who are depressed will show ODD type symptoms, so you might end up treating them for depression and using an antidepressant.
And would limit setting be one of the things that you would recommend when treating a child with ODD, that parents have limit setting where they put limits on the child?
Yes, that may well be part of it, yes.
And I'm not sure if you said it, but also would therapy sessions be a part of that?
And generally, yes.
Would you take steps to reduce sugar or other types of caffeinated things that would make one more hyper?
That's very rarely going to explain ODD. I mean, could that be a small part of it? Maybe. But that isn't going to be the source of a child coming in with ODD symptoms.
You said a moment ago that at some point that Dr. Martin, in the review of the records, had also come to a conclusion later on in her work that there's a possibility of reactive attachment disorder. Correct?
It was mentioned, but I read through the records. They're a little bit vague, but yet she had a couple hour-long sessions with Ronan alone, and she described him as compliant, cooperative, normal speech, insightful, judgment intact, adequate impulse control, good memory.
Are you reading from a particular document?
That's from her notes from November 4th of 2015. So he didn't come across at all as having ODD in these, she had two, I believe, 60-minute individual sessions with him. He came across as very sort of, really in a lot of ways unremarkable as far as having mental illness symptoms of an ODD nature.
But in that same November 4th, 2015, isn't it correct that she also pointed out he was eating too many sugars and sweets, and that the parents had to, and that this was leading to emotionally liable behavior, and that the parents, including screaming, tantrums, and that the parents eventually, she opines that they need to monitor his diet, correct? I'm summarizing without reading the document.
That sounds correct, yes.
Okay.
But again, eating some sugary sweets isn't going to explain that diagnosis.
We can take a break at this time, Judge.
Okay, all right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mark, if you could escort them back. Actually, we'll take a 15-minute break. It's 2:45, and we'll be in recess until 3. All right, everyone may be seated. Mr. Waheed, you may continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Doctor, we're going through some of the items that you reviewed that would form your opinion. So Ronan was also diagnosed at some point in the records with ADHD. Can you tell us what that is?
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder affects about 5% of kids, and they have trouble paying attention, concentrating, completing tasks, sitting still. That's also called hyperactivity, where they have trouble.
And that was, he was about 10 years old back then.
Yes, in that neighborhood.
And so well, first, based on your review of the records, would you concur with that opinion?
What doesn't seem to support it is the teacher complaints that occasionally occur aren't about he's not paying attention or he's getting bad grades because he can't concentrate or finish his work. So the teacher reports don't really support ADHD very well. And then when I see him, for instance, on his lengthy CPT interview, He doesn't show any hyperactivity at all, and he's concentrating, and he pays attention to everything that's said to him and responds appropriately. So, and then also the video in his box, he doesn't seem hyperactive in there most of the time. So I really felt like that may not be at all a accurate diagnosis.
Well, so this was when he was about 10. You didn't have the CPT interview when he was 10. You didn't have videos when he was 10. So based on the review of records up until he's 10, with the chief complaints about essentially what we just talked about before the break, which, the acting out, temper tantrums, the focus issues that are in the report that we just went through before the break, through all of those things. So just knowing what someone would know in the record up until the point where he's about 10. Based on that, would you concur, if you were to go back in your DeLorean to that time and you were making the diagnosis, would you agree that that could have been a valid diagnosis when he's about 10?
It could have been, but when you look at these notes, for instance, when he's 8, he's described as getting along with children and he responds to discipline. Other notes around that time describe normal mental status examination, normal behavior going back in the pediatric notes. So that doesn't really fit with ADHD.
What would you opine is a treatment for ADHD?
If the child has ADHD, if it's on the milder side, you can try behavioral interventions and modifying the environment and having them move their desk up to the front of the room so they're less distracted by the kids around them. And then when you get to moderate or severe cases, you generally have to go to medication.
Medication like clonidine?
That's a second level medication. There's sort of the first tier medications are still the stimulant medications like Ritalin.
Okay. What's 10X? TENEX.
That's a medicine like guanfacine. I'm sorry, like clonidine. It's called guanfacine. It's a similar blood pressure medicine, actually, but it was found to work for ADHD as well, to be helpful for it.
And based on your review of the records, you're familiar that Ronan was prescribed these medications?
Yes.
Okay. And is it, do you know that, so Dr. Tom Rickenbacker found that he had ADHD and also the reactive attachment disorder, correct? At the same time?
I'd have to refresh my memory. I think he was considering reactive attachment disorder also. I thought the wording was that there's RAD issues, but maybe he made the diagnosis.
I can refresh your recollection if you want.
Okay.
My pleasure.
You can approach.
Thank you.
Yeah, just let's have the protocol that you show it to counsel first before you approach the witness.
Show it first to her.
Yeah, so it's Does that help refresh your recollection?
It does, yes.
So it's fair to say that back in 2019, Ronan was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder and ADHD.
Yes, I don't believe Dr. Rickenbacker had the entire story at that time. I don't see any mention of, that's 2019, around the time that Ronan would have been starting to be isolated and put in the box, to my understanding.
So you
if he didn't know that, that could be the reason why he's roaming around at night inside the cell, and that he's having behavior problems at school.
All right. So you didn't agree with the ODD, oppositional defiance disorder diagnosis. You don't agree with the ADHD diagnosis here. What about the RAD diagnosis?
And again, I'm questioning those diagnoses because I think there's conflicting information, and the people who were assessing him at the time, I don't believe had the full picture.
All right. Now, it's fair to say, though, they were closer to the opportunity to assess than you are sitting here, correct?
As far as being in the room with him, yes, but they didn't have the benefit of many, many years of observations and records on him. They would not have been provided that or had the time to review all that anyway.
All right. So is that your opinion because you believe that, and I just want to be right about this. I think what you just said is that because they don't know that this is generally what you said. They don't know that he, Ronan, I assume, was in the box, the room, at the time, and that's an added fact that makes a difference for you, correct?
It does, yes. Again, because maltreatment can look like ADHD. And all these diagnoses say you have to exclude any other potential cause for this before you make, say, a diagnosis of ODD or ADHD.
But earlier when we were talking about Kathleen Martin and her family counseling associate records, those were in 2015. There's no allegation anywhere in the record that Ronan was in that room in the garage in 2015, correct?
Correct.
But he's still acting out and doing all these things and, being disruptive and throwing tantrums and uncontrollable, correct?
It's not like he's always like that. I mean, I didn't see any really big school problems at that time.
So when you say
And that's the history that is coming out from I believe, a parent. And then when she's in the room with him, he comes across as a pretty normal kid.
When who's in the room with who?
Ms. Martin is in the room with Ronan for those 2-hour sessions. And the pediatric records around that time aren't real documentary of extreme behavior problems either.
But after she's in the room with him for those sessions, she still opines he has oppositional defiance disorder, though, correct? And he's still not, in a room in the garage at this point.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. But you still don't think you think you're in a better position to now decide he did not have ODD back in 2015. Is that it?
What I tried to explain was I would want more information so that I could feel comfortable ruling in or ruling out that diagnosis. And I just don't know. I really just don't know. I don't have enough information.
So it's fair to say also you don't have enough information to say that Kathleen Martin's diagnosis is incorrect back in 2015.
Or
right?
correct. That's right. Either way.
All right. Would that also apply to the psychiatrist, Dr. Tom Rickenbacher's opinions? You don't have enough information to decide whether it is or isn't accurate? Is that your opinion?
It is, yes.
All right. Let's talk about, so as part of the basis of your opinion, you reviewed medical records, but you also reviewed school records, correct?
Yes.
All right. And those were school records from 2 different schools, correct?
Yes.
Independence Middle School and Basis Academy, correct?
Yes.
I believe Independence Middle School is earlier in time. Let me say that again. I believe Basis Academy is earlier in time.
Right.
All right. And so you reviewed those log entries, right? And
I have, yes.
so it's fair to say that there's a series of incidences where Ronan does something at school. The school basically reaches out to the parents, tells them what he did wrong, and then the parents respond, often the exact same day by email.
Objection as to hearsay.
I haven't,
Let him finish his question, Ms. Copeland, then you can make your objection. But you are, let me have you approach.
I believe Independence Middle School is earlier in time. Let me say that again. I believe Basis Academy is earlier in time.
Right.
All right. And so you reviewed those log entries, right? And
I have, yes.
so it's fair to say that there's a series of incidences where something does something at school. The school basically reaches out to the parents, tells them what he did wrong, and then the parents respond, often the exact same day by email.
Objection as to hearsay.
I haven't.
Let him finish his question, Ms. Copeland, then you can make your objection. But you are, let me have you approach. No, you're good. You're good. Okay. All right, objection sustained. All right, you can rephrase and move on, Mr. Waheed.
All right. So before we start getting into this, one of the things that you opined earlier was that
I apologize that it double played right there. For some strange reason, the stream that I was using, which was a local stream, cut out at the end, like every day. And then there's more that went on from Law and Crime. So that's why it keeps happening. Yeah.
that Tim Ferriter, his conduct was malicious. Remember that?
I do, yes.
So my understanding is malicious means wrongful, intentional, without legal justification, something where that a reasonable parent would not have engaged in that conduct towards a child for any valid reason, and that the primary purpose of the act was to cause the victim unjustifiable pain and injury. Is that what you meant by malicious?
I'm going to object as to improper opinion, legal definition.
Overruled. You can answer, sir, if that's what you meant.
That, I wouldn't have probably given that definition verbatim, but that seems to describe it, yes.
Okay.
Mean, cruel, not called for, inappropriate, potentially harmful, or even life-threatening.
And malicious is it well, let me ask you a question. What is the DSM-5?
The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it's the 5th edition. It's been around since, I believe, 1952. It's produced by the American Psychiatric Association, and it attempts to list every mental disorder that can affect human beings. And it's got hundreds of diagnoses in it, and it has descriptions and the criteria you would need to meet each of those diagnoses.
And is malicious a diagnosis in the DSM-5?
No.
No. Okay. So malicious is not a psychiatric diagnosis by you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It's really a lay opinion, correct? Because it's not a psychiatric opinion, which is what you're an expert at, correct?
It's a reflection on personality traits.
But since it's not in the DSM-5, it's fair to say it is not a psychiatric diagnosis, and that is your area of expertise, right?
Well, human behavior would be my area of expertise as well, and personality.
So I don't think you answered my question. So the question is that malicious, not being in the DSM-V5, and therefore not being a psychiatric diagnosis, to opine that someone's malicious would not be a psychiatric opinion, correct? It would not require your specialty, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that opinion is you as a layperson. That's your opinion, just as like it would be mine or anyone in the audience.
No, I'm making a clinical assessment of a parent's behavior towards their child. It's a clinical observation based on video evidence, based on other evidence, and based on working with abused children my entire career, as well as abusive parents. And malicious may be an adjective in the DSM, I don't know. We'd have to look in the index. It may be related to certain disorders.
I looked at it. I couldn't find it, but if you find it, please let me know. So,
Sustained, jury is instructed to disregard counsel's comments about his efforts at finding it in the DSM manual.
let's go back to now the school record. So, your opinion was that the parents' conduct was malicious, that there was, in other words, they, and I'm going to have to use some lay terms here, they didn't care at all about this kid, correct? That's what you're saying?
I never said that.
So I need a better understanding of where do you get malicious from?
To my understanding, it's a synonym for cruel or mean.
Okay. So you think they're cruel or mean?
Their behaviors, yes.
Okay. Towards?
Yes.
Okay. So there's examples at Basics where Ronan gets in trouble and school reaches out to the parents and the parents respond essentially saying they will now take care of that with some form of either talking to or some other form of punishment, correct?
I hope talking to him wouldn't be a form of punishment.
Well, some form of punishment.
Right, that
or
they're going to
talking.
respond, yes.
Okay, just so my record's clear on that. I'm not trying to say that they are the same. It's a or. So in other words, I'll say it again just so we're clear for the record, is that
I just wanted to say, just so we're clear, like for reality, that the word malicious or maliciously is found 6 times in the DSM-5. It is used as an adjective in all of those times. However, it is not defined. So he should learn how to control F. Just saying.
school would reach out to the parents and say, did this in school. And here's the harm it created. And then very, very soon thereafter, usually within the same day, the parents would respond apologizing to the school and saying that they will, in some cases, they said they'll speak to and they'll have a conversation with him, correct?
I believe so.
And in some cases, they said they will take corrective action with him, correct?
Something like that, yes.
Okay. In your opinion, you've done a lot of work with in the area of juvenile crime, in the area of juveniles. Is that would that be considered an appropriate parenting technique, their response?
It's not really a parenting technique. They're responding and letting the school know we hear what you said and we're going to deal with it. It really doesn't reflect on the quality or acceptability or appropriateness of the parenting technique. I mean, nowhere did they respond and say, okay, we're going to build a cell and isolate him for 2.5 or 3 years.
And in your review of the records, some of those instances that happened at Basics actually hurt other children, correct?
That's not entirely accurate. I don't know of any child that was significantly hurt. There was.
I didn't use the word significantly. I just said hurt other children.
Well, you have to look at each one in context, and there's several of them over the course of, over the course of 4.5 or so years of school records. There was several instances of conflict that got physical, and I think one of the first ones was a boy kicked in the leg at recess, and then he hit him once back. So it wasn't even who apparently did the hit first. He got hit, and he was responding defensively.
Sure, mutual combat. Both children got punished, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. There's also a situation, though, where he took his finger and thumb and pushed it up against a boy's neck, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be hurting another child, no?
That boy was, according to the teacher, was not being nice either. So
Is that a reason to do that, doctor? Is that a reason to?
Let him finish his answer, counsel, before you cut him off. Finish your answer, sir.
Yeah, it's not, I don't see him as acting in a vacuum. He just goes up and pushes his thumb into some boy's throat. There was an interaction with them. He took a pocket full of Legos to school, and I believe it was the boy snitched on him and said, hey, he's got Legos, and so the teacher took his Legos away and was upset, and then they got into this issue. But the other thing that makes me think of is he recreating the trauma, what he's been through, where he's been grabbed by the neck and pinned up against the wall and choked? Is he reenacting the trauma he's been through?
You also said just now that we're not acting in a vacuum. But it's fair to say that the parents are also not acting here in a vacuum, that they're reacting to.
Overruled. You can answer it if you know.
Help me. What do you mean reacting to?
Is acting out and seems to be uncontrollable, and they are trying to do what parents are supposed to do, control their child.
We're getting into which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Did their escalating of abuse of cause his behavior to get worse and worse, and it just became a vicious cycle?
I swear to you, I was about to say which came first, the chicken or the egg. Swear. I could be a psychiatrist. But seriously, nothing that they're talking about this kid doing, I think any of us that have boys have not experienced, or worse. So where is this out of control behavior? Because all kids get in trouble. Like, okay, some of you have a perfect child that has never gotten in trouble, but most of us have kids that have gotten in trouble at some point in time or another. Mine popped somebody's balloon walking down the hallway and got suspended. I mean, they all act out at some point in time in their lives. They're boys.
The worse he was mistreated,
hormones.
The worse he behaved. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like to me, because we don't have a whole lot of behavior problems going on before he was, say, 8, and then it seemed to start around that time.
Well,
and they had him up until that point for 6, from the pediatric records, really, are the main things, and they never took him to any sort of counseling. There's no school records with complaints on his behavior before age 8.
So it's fair to say.
I seriously can't imagine if someone like psychoanalyzed my parenting and my kid. It'd probably
say that.
I mean, I didn't lock him in a room, but I'm saying, like, you could sit there and break everything down and make it seem so much worse than it ever was. It's just normal life. Their reaction is extreme.
How do I word this? Can I come sidebar, Judge?
You can. All right, the objection is sustained.
Just because you don't have records before the age of 8, that's why you're saying that, correct?
That and the pediatric records don't suggest any problems with his behavior. They refer to normal mood, normal development, reaching his milestones on time.
But you weren't provided any of the school records or any other records before that age, correct?
Correct.
So
from school.
Sure.
Any other records from school.
Or any other therapy or other mental health records or anything like that?
Well, I have a mental status exam, in essence, from when he was 17 months old, when Dr., I think it's Halavy, assessed him, I think, in Vietnam, and he was described as smiling, laughing, walking, running, and climbing, and his fine motor skills were good. So he was actually not showing the full effects of being just sort of this non-reactive, non-responding sort of infant that's been completely neglected.
So you have no, other than that, you have no other mental health or therapy or records before the age of 8?
No.
But they have highlighted the worst things he's ever done so far in the testimony, and like they haven't said anything bad, like horrifically bad.
And that is why you're saying that there weren't any. That's your basis to say why there weren't any incidents before the age of 8.
I didn't see any.
Because you don't have those records, right?
Sustained. Unanswered. Sustained. Move on.
So when he goes to Independence, we see a similar pattern, correct? Where
Ms. Coakley, let him finish his question. Restate your question, Mr. White, so I can capture it.
Sure. We see a similar pattern that we saw at Basics, where there's an incident that happens within school. School reaches out to the parent, and the parent says that they will they'll talk to him, they'll do something about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a point in time where that's like almost every month, right, in 2019.
Approach. All right, the objection is sustained. Counsel, rephrase, please.
By the way, I'm not sure if you guys know, but this lawyer has only been on his case for a short period of time. His other lawyer dropped him. I think I might have mentioned it in the stream the other day. She's actually suing him. I read the complaint last night. She's suing him for non-payment. I guess he dropped her, and the contract said you have to pay me the full amount, whether I represent you through the end or not. And he's like, no, I'm done. I'm not paying you anymore. They had a difference of opinions and irreconcilable differences, like a marriage.
So I'm going to talk through the year of 2019. It's 2 schools. So he was at Immaculate Heart, and then he is at, for the first part of the year, and then at Basis the next part of the year. So looking at 2019. Just in February, March, April, just in those months, there seems to be an incident. There's at least 5 incidents, correct? A very short span of time.
In which month?
Late February of 2019 through early April of 2019.
I tried to list them out. I may have missed some, but I have 12 of them over a period of 4.5 years, 12 teacher communications with the parents about the behaviors.
All right. So that's
probably out of 800 school days. I've got roughly 12 complaints.
So the question, though, is in a very short span of time, from February 28th to April 5th, there are 6 incidents where the school has to reach out to the parents in a manner we just talked about, where they are complaining about his acting out his behavior, injuring other children during recess, or taking electrical items, calculators, whatever from other kids, and the parents respond to each one of those within a day, saying that they will take some corrective action.
And what period are you saying that starts in, what month and year?
February 28th, 2019.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
Okay. So there's February 28th, 2019, I have March 8th, 2019, March 16th, March 22, March 27th, April 5th, correct?
I don't have all those, I'm not sure if they're related or not. I have the the February 28th, 2019 one marked down, where he got into an altercation with another boy, and they were both throwing punches.
So the question I have, first, I can't ask the question until I know, are you agreeing or disagreeing with the foundation of what I'm saying?
I didn't document all those, so if you want to show them to me, if there's 6 of them there or 5 of them, I don't have those documented. But if they're all about the same incident, that's why I would not have documented all 5 instances, if it's just more about the same incident.
The different incidences. Each is a different incident. I understand your question. So I can show you. Hang on.
Do you need to approach?
I do, Judge. I just need to get organized first.
All right, you may approach. All right, Ms. Coker,
She
let me
looks
get a
older than
microphone in
him.
your hand when you make your objections. I got spanked from recording that they couldn't hear you, so I'm putting it on you now. Use the mic. I've yet to go a trial yet where I didn't get that call from recording, so.
Thank you.
I had said 5 or 6. I now count, and I've tried to help refresh recollection about 8 incidents from January 29th, 2019 through April 5th of 2019, where the school reached out to the parents with incidents that had taken place with.
So the question is, has his recollection been refreshed? That's the first question we have to get to before we talk about what his refreshed recollection
Agreed.
is.
I'm just giving context.
Yeah, but my concern is in the method of questioning. It's let's find out if his recollection's been refreshed first.
Has your recollection been refreshed, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So there were incidences on January 29th of 19, February 15th of 19, February 28th of 19, March 8th of 19, March 16th of 19, March 22nd of 19, March 27th of 19, April 5th of 19, at the school, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at each time, in each of those incidents, it ranged from some injury to another student to some property damage or theft, correct?
No. One of them is he had, I believe, green sprinkles in his possession. Another one was he took some snacks from another student. Another one was he was found in possession of a Texas Instruments calculator. Another one was he did something to a computer regarding the coding or something. He was trying to get to a game on that computer. And then he had the one we talked about already, we had a fight with a boy on the playground. I mean, they threw some punches. And then, let's see, another one was he kicked a ball at another student multiple times. And then, so
How was that
I didn't
not
see
what-
where anybody was injured or hurt. I mean, and many of these are regarding items he had in his possession or messing with the computer or having sprinkles.
Sprinkles, which he had stolen, right? Those were not his sprinkles, correct?
I'm not sure where he got the sprinkles.
I'm going by the documents you reviewed. And when you're saying not injured, isn't there literally on the February 28th, 2019, where the note says he has this is an ongoing pattern of injuring children at recess? Correct?
If it says that, yes.
You can look at it, it's in front of you.
I thought I had them in order. You did say February 19th?
I said February 28th. 28.
Okay. Yes, it does say that.
And when
He is assigned an after-school detention for 1 hour.
And okay, fair. And you said one of the examples when I said theft, you said, well, he was just found with a Texas Instruments calculator. That was a stolen calculator, correct? The parents are the
It was
ones.
not his. That's correct.
The parents found it and contacted the school to say he's got this calculator, it's not his.
Right, I believe that's right.
And the school said, oh, we've been looking for that, it's another student's.
Objected to hearsay.
Sustained.
So you'd agree that of the incidents, we have injuring other children, we have theft, correct? We have those two so far.
Yes.
All right. And it's appropriate for parents to react to that in a way to try and curb that type of behavior of their child, correct?
It depends on how they react. But yes, they should deal with it appropriately, yes.
So, and we went through the medical records already, but at this time, he's already been seeing a therapist. He has also seen a psychiatrist, Dr. Rickenbacker, at this point already, and this conduct continues to happen, correct?
Well, you're bringing up a lot of things from 2019, and that's around the time he was put in the box. So how much of this is acting out from being put in the box? It would be my first question, because you do document a blip up, a increase in his behavior issues at school.
Well, I went through I went through all of the records before that as well, and we can keep going through records in 2018. I could do those too, and you have them. And if you want, we can go through 2018.
Sustained.
Well, is it your position that this acting out that I just went through in 2019 did not occur in 2018?
We talked about some of the things that happened before, like the boy kicked him on the field, and then he punched the boy, and then the Legos incident.
And the finger and thumb incident?
Yes.
Okay. So there were things in 2018 as well?
Yes.
Going from February of 2018 all the way to December of 2018?
I have October of 18, but maybe there was one in December that I didn't document.
So on direct, you had talked a bit about the him being in essentially solitary confinement, correct?
Thank you so much, Brett. That is so sweet of you. I really appreciate that. And while I have you paused, because I was in the other room making dinner because I'm starving, couldn't wait, I had a question. When attorneys keep going on and on like that, asking experts questions and like trying to get them to say what they want them to say, if you were on a jury, how would you interpret that? Because I know when I was in that position, I was like, dude, you're just trying to twist what he's saying. And I didn't believe it. But there was someone on our jury who did believe it and kind of stuck with it because he said those words and that means it's true. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Thank you again, Brett. That is really sweet of you. I appreciate the support a lot.
Yes.
It means a lot
So
and it
it's
helps.
your position that he was in that room 14 to 16 hours on a daily basis. Yes?
It's not my position, it's what the records reflect.
Which records?
All of them put together, CPT records, police interviews, collateral interviews, for instance, what said.
You testified on direct, you reviewed 40 videos, Ring videos, correct?
About that, yes.
And that's out of approximately 21,000 Ring videos, correct?
I don't know how many there were. I know there was a whole lot of many videos.
So the 40 that the state selected to give you are the ones you reviewed?
Correct.
And it is your opinion from the review of those 40 videos, is that where you get your 14 to 16 hours on a daily basis that he's in his room? We're talking about January, right? January 22.
Yes.
Okay. That's where you get that information? From the Ring videos? I just don't know the basis of
No,
your...
I didn't get it from the Ring videos, no. But the Ring videos corroborate that history, that he would be woken up in the morning, he'd be asked, is it dirty, referring to the plastic bucket. Then I believe he was allowed to go out to the bathroom, then he'd go back in the box, and then the mother would take the children to school, and then she would come back and get him around 9, and then he would go back in the box after school, say, I don't know, 4:30, whatever the math would be.
Are you aware that...
4:30 p.m., of course.
So I'm trying to understand the basis of where you're getting that number, that's all. So I said, is it from the 40 videos? You said it's not just from that, it's from the record. So what are you talking about? Where do you get that from? You said the CPT, that was one thing you said. So who in the CPT said that? CPT record? Okay. Said he was in there 14 to 16 hours per day?
What I had was a ballpark of when he left the house, when he was let out of the box, and then when he got home from after school, when he was put in the box. And then he was kept in the box, my understanding, almost every night, fed in the box after everybody else had ate. And then he stayed in the box throughout the night until he was let out in the morning. So if you add up the hours, it's probably, I don't know, even if you went 5 o'clock to midnight, that's 7, then midnight to 8 is 8, so that's 15 hours. I'm just ballparking it. I don't have an exact number of hours.
If I were to tell you that if the evidence were to show that it is no more than 10 hours a night, and at most, on occasion, a 3-hour block during a day, would that change your opinion in any way as to whether or not, and I'm not sure what your opinion was here, whether or not it was malicious?
Any amount of solitary confinement for hours to me is unacceptable. There's no justification for it, and it's cruel.
Okay. So it wouldn't change your opinion?
No.
So the lessening of hours wouldn't change your opinion?
No.
Okay. And so if I were to tell you that,
Let him finish the question before you make your objection.
But did he seriously just say, if I were to tell you that it was 13 hours instead of 15, that it wasn't malicious? Holy shit. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
Go ahead, Ms. Wade.
sure,
Wow.
if I were to tell you that, hypothetically, that that he was out with family on various occasions, he participated in community events or any of those types of things, would that change your opinion in any way?
I'm aware of those episodes of being out and about. So no, I've already taken those into consideration.
If I were to tell you that he was provided a breakfast every morning from his mother, would that change your opinion in any way?
I'm aware of that already, except there were some mornings he didn't get breakfast, and it's on the Ring video as well, him being handed, say, a banana with some peanut butter on bread.
And the banana with peanut butter on bread is not breakfast in your opinion?
I didn't say that, no.
Okay, so you said he was not given breakfast, he was handed a banana with peanut butter on bread. That's what you just said.
No, I said some days he did not get breakfast.
Okay, and then other days he got, as you said, a banana with peanut butter on bread.
My understanding, most days he was given breakfast.
So, on direct, by the way, you had said that you spoke to the issue of the banana with peanut butter on bread in the context of torture. Is it your opinion that it's torturous to get a banana with peanut butter on bread for breakfast?
No.
Okay, because I'm a big fan of banana and peanut butter mix. So.
I am too.
Okay. And is it your opinion, or would it change your opinion if you saw videos of eating dinner outside his room during that January of 22 time period?
He said that on 3 instances, he did have dinner with the family outside of the cell in January. So about one out of every, whatever it would be, 10 days, he ate with the family dinner.
And would it change your opinion if, going to the breakfast, that he had breakfast outside his room, out in the kitchen?
I don't recall seeing information on how often he was out for breakfast. My impression was from reading all the materials that he didn't go out for breakfast, or very rarely.
Would it change your opinion if there were videos with him sitting on the couch watching TV with his dad?
My opinion about the okayness of solitary confinement? No. No, but I know that at times he was out of his cell and spent some time in the house with the family.
I want to know what the deal is with Dad's bracelets. Oh, where was the... Breakfast should be a minimum requirement, like food in general should be, but you would be amazed how many people send their kids to school with no food. Like, they don't feed them at home, they only eat at school. It's unbelievable. It's really sad.
So it's fair to say your opinion.
How much would you love that if for an entire month you had to eat that every single morning and that's all you got, and you couldn't toast the bread and you couldn't put honey on it either? That's it. You couldn't even cut the banana up. Here's one banana, and here's 2 slices of bread with some peanut butter on it, not toasted, nothing. Just here it is. That's all it is. No, thank you.
Give me your
Well,
opinion
hold on.
again, in like, sum it up, because I'm a little vague on it. What is the opinion you are trying to, as an expert psychiatrist, convey to this jury?
I've given multiple opinions. What opinion would you like to know that I can repeat?
Something that a psychiatrist would opine on.
What the hell kind of question is that?
Parents' treatment of was psychologically abusive. It was physical abusive. It was neglectful. It put him at serious risk of harm and health issues, or even worse. It was cruel. It was malicious. It was dehumanizing. It was degrading. It was very damaging to his identity, his self-esteem, his whole adjustment to life, being put in this kind of a solitary confinement situation.
Why on earth would you on cross ask such an open-ended question to let him reinforce his point? I don't understand where he's going with this. That is absolutely ludicrous.
And knowing what RAD is, and that there are, as we discussed already earlier, that we don't know what first 17 months was like before he was adopted, are you taking the opinion that he does or does not suffer from reactive attachment disorder?
I would concur that he had signs of reactive attachment disorder when he was younger. In fact, one of the pieces of that was early on when he was an early toddler. His mother said that he was just really resistant to being cuddled, which is sort of a classic sign of reactive attachment disorder.
And that would be something in line with what would have happened to him in the first 17 months of his life, correct? That would have been that's a very likely cause for that reactive attachment disorder.
Knowing all we do, yes, that would line up.
Okay. And is it your opinion that that Tim Ferriter caused the reactive attachment disorder?
No.
Okay.
Did his behavior exacerbate it and bring signs of it back? I would say yes. But
Okay.
he didn't cause it. It was caused by his first 17 or so months in Vietnam.
You also know, though, from review of all the records we've already talked about here today, that he was given medical advice, and he followed that advice, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
Are you aware if Mr. Ferriter was provided any medical advice to deal with the reactive attachment disorder?
What I'm aware of is that he was taken to several counselors when he was younger, and what kind of struck me was he didn't stay with any counselor more than really a few sessions, and then he wouldn't go anymore, and then later he would go to another counselor and see them maybe once or twice or 3 times, and then it would stop. So I question why there was not consistency and follow through with the first or the second or the third counselor to try to treat his problems. I don't know the answer to that.
And if I were to tell you, hypothetically, that Tim Ferriter was provided medical guidance from all the records we've looked at, and that he attempted to follow that as best he and his family could, under the circumstances, would that change your opinion in any way?
Improper objection, improper question. And hearsay.
Approach. All right, the objection is sustained. You need to rephrase, Mr. Wahid.
So, Doctor, if Mr. Ferriter was provided medical advice and relied upon it, would that change your opinion?
About his treatment in the solitary confinement or the physical abuse, I mean, no, I don't see how it would. I don't think any professional gave him advice to put your child in solitary confinement or physically abuse the child or withhold meals for punishment or take his one book away as punishment or turn the lights out. No, I don't. It wouldn't.
In terms of if any of the behavior of Tim Ferriter, do you believe it was in response to, because we had a conversation earlier about chicken and egg, or you did, so your position is that Mr. Ferriter is the chicken and the egg, based on that question I just asked you, which is if hypothetically Mr. Ferriter was provided medical advice and relied upon it in his journey with Rome, would that change your opinion as to who's the chicken and who's the egg in this scenario?
The easy answer is no. I don't know how it would. But as I said earlier, Mr. Ferriter didn't cause the original reactive attachment disorder problem.
Correct. So did Mr. Ferriter? So the short answer you just gave is no, it wouldn't change your opinion. Correct.
Correct.
All right.
Debbie, I love pickles more than most people, and that's just gross.
On direct, you talked about the juvenile detention center. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you were talking about what the confinement looks like, correct?
Yes.
And you were talking about how it isn't pitch black in there.
Right.
All right. But there is a thing called lights out at a juvenile detention center, correct?
Yes, but there's enough lighting where officers can do their rounds and look in and see all the kids. So it's not pitch black, but the lights are dimmed down, so it's easier for the kids to sleep.
You wrote an article that I reviewed where you talked about the type of violence that happens at juvenile detention centers, correct?
You mean towards the kids?
Yes, towards the kids or from the kids to each other.
In the 90s?
Object as to relevance.
Sustained. Unless you want to approach Mr. Wahid.
No.
He's scraping the bottom of the barrel at this point.
It's fair to say you've written substantially on juvenile crime, correct?
Yes. Juvenile violence and homicide in particular, yes.
And you're familiar with the term school to prison pipeline, correct?
Object as to relevance.
Sustained.
As far as you
was
know,
trying to-
based on all the records you reviewed, Mr. Ferriter never called the police on his child, did he?
Object as to relevance.
Sustained.
He never did anything to have the police called on him.
What are the options for parents who have a child with reactive attachment disorder in terms of private pay solutions?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
But to answer that question, it's to take them to a therapist and keep them in that therapist longer than a couple sessions, because a therapist doesn't even get to know you for a couple sessions. So how are they supposed to develop a treatment plan in a couple sessions? It's not like you're going to the doctor and they're diagnosing you by looking at your physical injuries. That's really frustrating.
Go sidebar, Judge, on that.
You can approach.
Judge, how do I make my case?
All right, the objection is sustained. Next question.
Right.
Doctor, now, I don't know, a couple hours ago, I asked you about the ability to opine on a diagnosis without having evaluated a patient or an individual. And you'd asked me to show you the section. May I approach, Judge?
You can approach Ms. Coakley first. And then you can approach the witness, Mr. Wade.
I am going on record. None of my audience better do anything with green sprinkles tomorrow. Just saying. I know someone's going to. Oh, that
Take the mic
attorney.
with you if you're going to be speaking.
He's going to have a mailbox full.
Showing you the section 7, and I think I earlier stated it was section 7 sub 3 of the Principles of Medical Ethics with annotations, especially applicable to psychiatrists.
This is called the Goldwater Rule. Had to do with Barry Goldwater when he was running for president, and there was a poll about whether he was fit to be president or not. That's where this came from. And I've been in committees trying to rewrite this because I was on the ethics committee for 18 years. So I'm very familiar with this. And that doesn't exclude us if we're asked for a professional opinion.
What is the rule?
Unless you've been granted proper authorization for such a statement. So being an expert witness for the court would be proper authorization to offer my professional opinions.
If you could just read the whole thing for the jury, just because they don't know what you're looking at.
Okay. On occasion, psychiatrists are asked for an opinion about an individual who is in the light of public attention and who has disclosed information about himself, herself through the media. That is, that person in the light of attention. In such circumstances, a psychiatrist may share with the public his or her expertise about psychiatric issues in general. However, it is unethical for a psychiatrist to offer a professional opinion unless he or she has conducted an examination and has been granted proper authorization for such a statement.
So I don't know if you guys watched the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. I'm sure a lot of you did, but this was a big deal in that trial because Amber Heard's side was trying to get one of the experts to comment on Johnny Depp's state of mind, things like that, but he had never examined them. So there was a lot of debates back and forth whether that was possible or not. And it all boils down to this rule. And the whole purpose of this rule is to keep actual psychiatrists from commenting on public figures, people in the media, things like that, that they know nothing about, have, 6 degrees of separation plus from, not from them looking over records and testifying in court. It's like apples and oranges, what he's trying to pull here with this.
And it should say there, from that person in light of public attention. So this is really about talking heads getting on TV and talking about somebody and making a psychiatric diagnosis, say some serial killer or some other, typically those sorts of crimes, where the psychiatrist will make opinions without having done an examination.
There's no
without having anything to go on other than what they've learned about from, say, the media. So it's trying to stop that sort of attention-seeking behavior by people who like to get attention being on one of these talking head shows, to put it bluntly.
There's no exception in the rule, though, written, correct?
Unless you're granted appropriate legal authorization or whatever it is. Yes.
Thank you. No other questions?
All right, Ms. Copeland, how long do you expect on your redirect? Because we've been going over an hour. I want to give the jury. All right, I'm going to give the jury a 10-minute break then before we go to the redirect. It's 4:20. We'll be in recess until 4:30. And sir, same instruction. All right, everyone can be seated. Before I let the attorneys go, my feeling is that we'll conclude with his redirect, and then we'll be done for the day.
I decided to put in a few more ring videos, and so I have the witness here just to put those in.
Thank you.
That should be like 1 minute.
Okay, but my understanding was you have a substantial amount of other publications or publishing that you're going to do, so that's going to have to wait until tomorrow.
That's perfectly fine, Your Honor, but if I could I just put that witness on
You-
very quickly after him?
Oh, you have another witness?
Yeah, I'm just going to put the detective on again to see these.
All right, we need to squeeze every minute out of the day that we have, so if you can finish that witness and we don't keep the folks, because one of the jurors indicated a problem staying after 5 today, so I don't want to push that. All right, that'll be fine. Okay, all right, good enough. All right, sir, you can step down during the break and just, obviously, same instruction, don't speak with anyone regarding your testimony.
You'd be surprised how much of it is like totally worthless, useless.
All right, all sides ready to proceed?
You never know.
All right, let's let the witness take the stand again. Do we have the witness?
You're on mute.
All right, Mark, as soon as the witness takes the stand, you can bring the jurors out. All rise.
Jury entering.
So another thing, during one of the breaks, they did mention possibly having a Richardson hearing, which has to do with expert testimony, but they never followed up on it. So I imagine in today's hearing, we can get into that.
All right, everyone may be seated.
Real quick, do you want me to run today's stuff tomorrow, or do you want me to hold it till Monday? Because if I do it tomorrow, they won't have anything for Monday.
No, that's connected.
All right, Ms. Coakley, you may go ahead and begin.
So just to go back to that Goldwater doctrine, are you allowed to opine on whether or not the President of the United States has a psychological condition based on their interviews on television?
No.
Are
It's
you?
considered unethical to do that.
Would you be allowed to just watch the TV coverage of this case and come in and do an opinion?
No.
Is it permissible to, as part of a court proceeding, review all the records involved and opine in certain circumstances?
Yes.
Now, there was a lot of questioning on cross-examination about whether or not Tim Ferriter acting on the advice of medical personnel would change your opinion. Was there any indication in the records you reviewed that the defendant in this case was advised to treat his son how he did?
No, there was not.
Was there any indication from any of the people involved that it was appropriate to confine his child for multiple hours a day?
No.
Was there any indication that any medical professional ever told him that he should keep his child in a room in the dark for hours during the day?
No.
Was there any indication that any medical professional said that the child should be deprived of access to a bathroom?
No.
Would that be a medically acceptable treatment for any condition?
No. I
Now-
can't think of one.
What, you can't think of one?
I can't.
Now, I want to talk for a second about some of the specifics that you testified to. There was a little bit of a talk about the oppositional defiant disorder diagnosis by Miss Martin. Was she a doctor or a clinical licensed social worker?
She's a social worker.
So that wasn't a diagnosis that was done by a doctor.
Correct.
In addition, that was in the year, what year thereabouts was that?
That should have been 2015 when he was, 8.
2015, or would it be 6?
It was 2015.
Leading, is that the sustained rephrase?
Well, how old would he have been?
He was 8.
And in general, did you see, or were you able to tell how often he was, there was any kind of intervention for that, or how often he met that licensed clinical social worker?
Sorry.
Okay.
I was looking.
Was it more than a
Okay.
handful of times?
I'm wrong. It was, yes, okay, I'm with you. We're talking about Kathleen Martin.
Right.
Yes, and that was, I have in my records, September to November of 2015, when he would have been 8 in 2nd grade.
So a 3-month period?
If that, I could only find 3 sessions, the intake and then a couple of those, a couple others.
And in reviewing of the records that were made available to you, is she the only practitioner that found that oppositional defiant disorder?
Susan Martin, in the same year, a counselor also who saw him, very limited notes from her as well, but she had ODD as a diagnosis or possibility.
And would that not reflect later on? Was that reflected in the findings of the other people he saw, like in 2018 and 2019? Which would be like Dr. Reinbacher?
Yeah, he focused more on the ADHD. I believe ODD may have surfaced.
Now, or was he, take a look, was he just reactive attachment disorder and ADHD?
Yes.
Now, is there a treatment for oppositional defiant disorder if it in fact is accurate?
Yes.
Does it involve locking a child in a room?
No.
Does it involve isolation or confinement of a child?
No.
Would it be just therapy and medicine?
Yes.
Now, is there any indication that that was pursued beyond those 3 appointments that you told us about?
No, and that's what I could never sort of find a reason in these couple therapists he went to as to why it just stopped after 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. There was no sort of explanation. It just stopped.
Now, we also discussed with defense that there was diagnoses at some point in his history for ADHD. Is ever it's confining a child a treatment for that?
No.
Now, we talked about what Dr. Reichenbacher found between 2000 and the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019. About how old was he at that point?
He would have been 11 at that time.
And even then, with the reactive attachment disorder and the ADHD, is it a treatment for a reactive attachment disorder to confine a child for long periods of time?
No.
And in Dr. Reinbacher's records, is there a reflection or a consideration about whether or not it is experiencing aggression?
You're saying, does it address that?
Yeah, does it address whether or not that is a symptom that is he is struggling with?
Well, January, it says, of 2019, it says he's doing better with not getting angry, and he's been apologizing, and then in May, it says he's not having severe aggression, and that he's having adequate behavior at school, and that's in May of 2019.
And is that, based on the records that you reviewed, the last professional intervention with a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a clinical social worker in 2019?
Yes, that's it.
In total, about how many times did he even see Dr. Reichenbach?
A handful of times, 4 or 5, maybe 6, something like that.
Now, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You said 4, 5, or 6 times?
It was 4 or 5, maybe 6.
Now, you mentioned that you had some disagreements about, or maybe some questions about the diagnoses that Dr. Reichenbacher came to. Is it important for a psychiatrist when making a differential diagnosis to know something like the conditions in which the child is living?
It's extremely important, yes. I mean, is the child being abused? Is the child being neglected? Is the child in solitary confinement? And around the end of the time that Dr. Reichenbacher was seeing him, that was occurring, and there's nowhere in the notes he had any idea of that.
Would that be important information that would influence an expert making an opinion about the cause of some type of behavior by a child?
No, absolutely. That would be a huge influence on your assessment of why the child's having problems at school.
I want to talk for a second about some of the school misbehaviors that the defense went into. You talked about behaviors that started occurring in a cluster in February of 2019. Does that coincide with when he starts to be confined in a room in a garage in Arizona?
Yes, it does.
And can that type of treatment impact his behavior?
I believe it would have had a huge impact on his behavior, yes.
Now, when we talk about like the correspondence for these types of behavioral problems, are you also seeing very minor infractions committed behaviorally?
Yes.
Things like bad language?
Yes.
Stealing a piece of candy?
Yes.
Now, are those, even with the acts of a mutual combat with another child, getting into a fight with another child, are those the level of behavioral issues that you would expect with a child that has a severe conduct or attachment disorder?
He doesn't have a conduct disorder per se. I mean, that's a diagnosis. I would say he has conduct disorder.
Okay.
I don't think you mean that.
What do you think I mean? What do I mean? Tell
You
me.
mean a behavioral?
Yes, it's someone who has a behavioral problem that is clinically severe. Would you expect to see a higher level of behavioral problems in their life?
Well, yeah, you would. Even with a child with reactive attachment disorder, they're going to, or symptoms of it, they're going to have some delay and maybe not, they're not going to be so great at their psychosocial skills, their social skills, so they can get into, more likely to get into conflicts or be teased by other kids.
As far as like the level of adverse behaviors that his experience is indicating, would you consider these to be severe behaviors that, based on the records from the school?
No, not at all. One of the most telling things is he never even got suspended. So often, in my own practice, for instance, I'll see kids that age, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. If they get into a fight, they get suspended. It's sort of like the intent of the child and how severe is it. And so he's never once been suspended, which really tells you that nothing really rose to a particularly severe level of aggression.
That fist fight that we read that email about, did both children get punished?
They did, yes.
Now, did you see in the review of the records, was there any indication that at any point had an IEP or any kind of individual educational plan to address behavioral issues at the school?
No, I didn't see that, no.
Was there an indication that the school was told that he didn't have behavioral issues in some cases?
That he did or didn't?
Did not.
Yes, there were.
Tell us about that.
Well, there's some notes from the school that say that in general been doing fine this year and there hasn't been any problems. And then the other thing is when I had mentioned how many days of school he's been in the 5 years up to being put in the box, we're really talking about hundreds and hundreds of days at school, and yet we only have these isolated handful of events, whatever it is, 10 or 15, based on the email. So really you're talking about a boy who's getting in trouble not very frequently at all when you look at 180 school days a year.
Now, when we're talking about the communication that the defendants had with the child's school indicating that they were notified of the punishment and they were going to address it, is there any indication that the defendants notified the school that the way that they were going to address it was to confine the child in a room in their garage?
No.
Did they ever inform the school of the living situation of which they were subjecting the child to?
No.
Now, you also talked briefly about a report by another licensed clinical social worker, Kenny Miller. In reviewing his report, was there a bias in his report that you perceived?
I need you to approach. Objection sustained. Rephrase the question, Ms. Coakley.
The report of the social worker, Kenny Miller, did you take into consideration the timing of when it was issued?
Yes, I did.
When was it issued?
After the Ferriters were arrested.
And was it based in large part on their representations to Mr. Miller?
It was, yes.
And so did that have an impact on how much you weighed his conclusions?
It did, yes, because I didn't see that he had any exposure or access to all the other information in this case that would have, I think, improved his ability to understand what exactly was going on with and the parenting.
Now, lastly, the defense asked you about your ability as a psychiatrist to opine that something is malicious. Is it in your realm of expertise to make a clinical assessment of parents' behaviors, especially in the cases of abuse?
Oh, yes. I mean, commonly.
Is that something that psychiatrists, medical doctors like yourself, especially forensic psychiatrists, commonly do?
Yes.
And based on all your training and experience and also the active literature, are you able to, as a psychiatrist, to opine that this conduct was malicious and harmful?
Yes, and those physical abuse or psychological abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, those are actually diagnostic categories in the DSM.
That
we need to put those in the record when we believe that they're occurring, so we have an accurate representation in the medical record of what we have opined about the patient.
You believe that was occurring here?
I believe what?
Do you believe that was occurring here, abuse and neglect?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, sir, that concludes your testimony.
Sorry, I couldn't click fast enough and it wasn't clicking the way it was supposed to click. Okay, so that is, she just does a quick recalling of the forensic examiner who was on yesterday evening, and all it is just admitting evidence. So they go through numbers of exhibits and all of that. So instead of watching that, I wanted to show you this, if I can get up the right thing. Okay, let me see if I can make that bigger. I think I can. Okay. interesting when that plays out. Yes, it's a lawsuit against him by his attorney. So this case was filed a year and a half ago. So he got an attorney right away. And that other attorney worked with them the whole time up until, so I guess for almost a whole year. And then he decided he didn't want to go with them anymore. He didn't want to follow their legal strategy, anything like that. And he dumped them. And that's when he got this attorney. Or maybe he had another one in between, because this one said they just got on the case. I don't know. Anyways. And so he doesn't want to pay him, because think about it. Generally, attorneys, like criminal attorneys, work on a flat fee because you don't really know what it's going to take. Is your case going to settle? Is it not? Things like that. So he owes that regardless. So he's going to pay that attorney, and he has to pay the other attorney that's going to charge him the full shebang because he's actually doing the work. So then again, you can't pay people if you're in jail, so could be interesting. All right, everyone. I hope you have a fabulous evening. The pups and I are going to bed because I slept wrong last night. It takes like a week to recover from it, I swear. I will talk to everyone soon. Take care.